Recording in progress.
Good evening, everyone. Tonight is a regularly scheduled meeting of the Land Use Committee of the City Council. I'm Andrea Kelly. I'm the chair. We have with us committee members in the chamber tonight from Ward 1, Councillor Ellison Leary. From Ward 2, Tariq Lucas. I'm from Ward 3. Randy Block from Ward 4. And Stephen Farrell from Ward 8. And online we have Councillor Andrea Downs from Ward 5. So we have a quorum, and we're going to get to business. Our first order of business tonight is a request for an extension of time to exercise special permit number 89-23 at 49 Lenox Street. Planning, do you want to say something about this? Oh, this is my ward, so I would ask Councillor Lucas. Motion to hold? It's the extension of time for 49 Lenox Street. They just need a little extra time. Can we do this on a voice vote? Yes. All in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Sorry, what is the motion?
It's a request for, it's the first thing on
Yes,
your...
but is the motion to hold or to allow?
Motion to allow an extension of time.
Thank you. I didn't hear it because maybe the mic wasn't in use. Thank you.
All in favor of allowing a request for an extension of time, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Anyone in opposition? Abstain? It's approved. John and Kylie Mills, you have an extension of time for 49 Lenox Street. The next petition before us is a request to allow oversized dormers and to further extend non-conforming FAR at 45 Bishopsgate Road, which is docket item number 296-24. And we will hear from planning on this. Joe? I forgot to introduce him.
Good evening. I'm Joe O'Donoghue. I'll be representing planning for this petition on 45 Bishopsgate Road, which is just requiring two items of relief. The first is to allow a dormer exceeding 50% of the length of the wall below. And then the second item is to further exceed non-conforming floor area ratio as they are currently at a 0.50 and looking to go up to 0.53, where 0.32 is the maximum in single residence 1 where this property is located. There are 5 criteria to consider with this. The first is that the specific site is an appropriate location for a dormer exceeding 50% of the length of the wall below and the increase in non-conforming floor area ratio. Next is that the dormer exceeding 50% of the length of the wall below and the resulting increase in non-conforming floor area ratio is developed and operated will not adversely affect the neighborhood. Third is that there will be no nuisance or serious hazard to vehicles or pedestrians created by the dormer exceeding 50% of the length of the wall below and the increase in non-conforming floor area ratio. Fourth is that the access to the site over streets is appropriate for the types and numbers of vehicles involved in the construction of a dormer exceeding 50% of the length of the wall below and the increase in non-conforming floor area ratio. And fifth and final is that the proposed increase in non-conforming floor area ratio is consistent with and not in derogation of the size, scale, and design of other structures in the neighborhood. This is a look at where the property is. It is located close to where the Chestnut Hill Historic District is, but it is not in fact in the Chestnut Hill Historic District. It is right in between that and Newton Center. It is in a single residence 1 zone and located in an area that is predominantly single family housing along with that single family residence that it actually is. You don't see a large variety of uses or other types of structures in the neighborhood, but there are a lot of pre-existing nonconformities with the size and some architectural features in the neighborhood. Firstly, I did want to bring up that there were some plans submitted last week with a very minor revision. I've let the applicants know that at least from planning's perspective that they are good to proceed with this and we don't need to reissue another land use committee memo or look for another hearing date as the proposed changes do not affect either item of relief. It does not affect the dormer or the floor area ratio, and is in fact bringing things smaller and more conservative, as opposed to making any changes that would otherwise be closer to a nonconformity. There's one proposed change, and that is, as you see on the left, the past plans had a larger 7.5 foot by 14.1 foot porch. And then on the right is the current plan where the proposed porch area is just really the landing at the top of the stairs, which is just going to be 6.7 feet by 4.5 feet. So as it is more conservative, I told them it was good to go ahead. But if the council feels otherwise, we would have to definitely reissue the memo and hold this, and we would definitely be happy to work on a continuance memo from planning. But without further ado, I'll proceed to the elevations as well. Or sorry, the actual site plan. So there's two components to this project, and the first is with the increase in floor area ratio, and that is where you see in red some of the additions that actually add floor area ratio, which includes the two proposed dormers, which are both oversized and require relief. And then there is a small addition that'll be a little bit clearer on the elevations that'll show where they're actually adding a little bit of floor area to the second floor, but otherwise they're just proposing changes to the porch, as well as a small overhang that our chief zoning official spoke with the Commissioner of Inspectional Services and ruled that that was not, in fact, any sort of additional area. It's just a roof overhang that is not going to add any floor area or require any additional relief. So this is a look at that revision to the front, and this is the front elevation. I'll show it against what is currently existing, but just to look down, you see the two columns on each side. On the left and on the right, you see a more modest proposal that just has the columns and just that landing area. This is a look at what's happening with the front, just to change to that porch, which will actually be smaller than the existing porch. And in the top right, you see one of the two oversized dormers, which is very clearly in excess of 50% of that wall plane below. Next is the rear, where we have new dormers being added to the right side, which is also 50% of the length of the wall below. And there is a very minor change to this bottom left dormer there, where that's being popped out by a foot or two and adding a little bit of square footage that increases their floor area ratio. This is a look at the structure from the right, where things are maybe a little bit less clear than they would be to the other side as far as where that additional area that I just spoke about will be. But you can see one of the two oversized dormers that is on the top of the roof line there. This is a look on the left. If you can see on the second floor on the right, there's just that little extra bump out in that by right, not exceeding 50% dormer. That is adding a little bit of floor area ratio. And then you can see on the top left of the proposed where that other oversized dormer is. And that's all I have for elevation, so I will turn it back to the committee.
Thank you, Joe. At this time, I would also like to acknowledge and identify a few other of the city staff who are with us. We have our city clerk, Scott Matthews here in the chamber. Also online are Elisa Sandoval, Kat Kemet, that was just Joe Iadonisi, and we have City Solicitor Jonah Temple. With us also joining on virtually is City Councilor Alan Lobovitz, who's a member of the committee. We have City Councilors Pam Wright and Julia Maliki, not members of the committee, but very welcome here tonight. Now, is there anyone here from the petitioner, either here in the chamber or online, who would like to speak to this proposal?
Yes, Madam Chair. Lawrence Lee on behalf of the petitioner.
Mr. Lee, please go ahead.
Good evening. For the record, Lawrence Lee, Rosenberg, Friedman, and Lee. Offices at 246 Walnut Street. Madam Chair, with your permission, I'd like to share my screen, please.
Go ahead.
Thank you. So I'm not going to belabor the point. It's a rather straightforward petition. One of the things that I do want to get on the record is that there was a correction made that we have not yet submitted to planning. It was a couple weeks back when I was not around overseas, and the architect had sent me an updated FAR worksheet, which I will upload for Joe. The FAR currently is actually 0.47 rather than 0.5, and the proposed FAR is 0.49. And again, so we will send an updated worksheet. What I would like to do is really supplement Joe's presentation with a quick tour and of the neighborhood, as well as just some context with some rendering. So this is the zoning map. This is an SR1 zoning district. Here's a picture of the existing home, and I want to show you some of the homes that are immediately around the neighborhood. And you can see these are gorgeous houses, large homes. Some of them are actually on some, what I would call undersized lots as it relates to SR1 zoning districts. So the changes that you see here, these are renderings that you probably wouldn't even notice if you were driving by the front of the property. You'll see some of the dormer illustrated here on the right side. The back, here's a dormer, and we're keeping this porch, which is one of the changes that Joe had mentioned. This is just a copy of the site plan that Joe had already shown you. By way of some context, it's not uncommon to see some existing homes with non-conforming FARs. When the law changed over 10 years ago now, homes that were otherwise compliant became non-conforming, legally non-conforming, just simply by the way the FAR was calculated. So it's not surprising when you have a quote-unquote undersized lot being what I deem to be under 15,000 square feet. Here we have just slightly over 11,000 square feet of lot area for an SR1 zoning district. An old lot, just by way of context, is 15,000 square feet minimum. So the fact that we have an undersized lot, what I'm calling an undersized lot for an SR1 zoning district, not uncommon to see legally non-conforming FAR. So again, the existing FAR is actually a 0.47. We will be proposing a 0.49, which is a very, very minor change. Aesthetically, the dormers, you can see from the illustrations, are very negligible, and you really wouldn't notice it unless you really know all the details of the home. So I'll leave it at that, and if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
Thank you, Mr. Lee.
Thank you.
Let's see first if there are any members of the public who would like to ask questions, speak, or make comments about this petition. Anyone online? Not seeing any hands. If you are, you can raise your hands later if it occurs to you. Jamie Kim?
Oh, this is maybe a minor point, and this is
We're the homeowners.
we're
This
the
is Jamie
homeowners.
Kim and Ryan Kim.
Yes.
Okay.
And we just noticed that Lawrence's presentation had the correct revised drawing of the rear of the house, but in one of the slides that was presented
By
earlier
Joe.
it had the old like we were going to demolish the screened-in porch, which we've decided to keep. And so I just wanted to make sure that's not going to cause any problems for an approval or a vote. That the slide had a picture of just a porch with a railing, not a screened-in porch. Again,
In the back.
maybe it doesn't matter. I just wanted to point that out.
Thank you. Joe, do you have anything you'd like to say about that?
I'll make sure that I correct the issue. I'll double check that that image is coming from the updated, or sorry, from the old plans, rather than the updated plans. Because that's most likely an error on my part on not seeing or not updating the images that showed the deck as opposed to the porch, which were from the original plans that were submitted. But I'll make sure that it's correct and that we are matching the elevations and the conditions correctly so that they can retain their porch.
Thank
Great,
you.
thank you.
Thank you, Joe, and thank you, petitioners, for pointing that out. We want to make sure it's accurate. Without any other hands up now, we can take it into committee for comments from the Land Use Committee members. Anyone have any questions or comments? Councilor Leary?
It's a lovely project, and I have absolutely no issues with it.
Thank you. Councilor Lucas?
Councilor Leary took the words out of my mouth. So President Laredo's not here, so when ready, I'll make the motion to close the public hearing and move for approval. Thank you.
I don't see anyone else with their hand raised. Could we see the findings and conditions before we take a vote on this, please?
The findings are that the specific site is an appropriate location for a dormer exceeding 50% of the length of the wall below, and the increase in non-conforming floor area ratio as architectural designs and features such as oversized dormers are common in the area, and the increase in floor area ratio is limited to 0.03. Second, that the dormer exceeding 50% of the length of the wall below and the resulting increase in non-conforming floor area ratio as developed and operated will not adversely affect the neighborhood, as dwellings of a similar size and character are common in the neighborhood. Third, that there will be no nuisance or serious hazard to vehicles or pedestrians created by the dormer exceeding 50% of the length of the wall below, and the increase in non-conforming floor area ratio as the proposal does not affect traffic or circulation to and from the site. Fourth, that access to the site over streets is appropriate for the types and numbers of vehicles involved, and the construction of a dormer exceeding 50% of the length of the wall below, and the increase in non-conforming floor area ratio as the proposed alterations do not affect traffic or circulation to and from the site. And lastly, that the proposed increase in non-conforming floor area ratio is consistent with and not in derogation of the size, scale, and design of other structures in the neighborhood, given other dwellings of a similar size, scale, and design are common in the neighborhood. Our proposed conditions are the standard conditions. It is worth noting that condition 1 plan referencing is why the petitioner's point is important there, and why planning will make sure that we're referencing the correct elevations, which we've already updated to reflect the dates of the current plans. Even if the presentation didn't reflect that, we'll make sure that those are correct in the order every time. Thank you.
And Joe, you will then be receiving the updated FAR worksheet from the petitioners also, correct?
I'll be sure to send it, Madam Chair.
That's correct.
So when we take a vote on this, it will be conditional on the receipt of that and the approval of that. Okay, I think we're ready to vote. All in favor of closing the public hearing?
Aye.
Aye. Please say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Now we'll take a vote on the petition itself. This is a roll call vote.
Councillor Block?
Aye.
Councillor Downs?
Aye.
Councillor Farrell?
Aye.
Councillor Kelly?
Aye.
Councillor Leary?
Aye.
Councillor Lobovitz?
Aye.
Councillor Lucas?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Great. Good luck with the project. It's very nice.
Thank you.
The next petition we have before us is number 301-24. It's It's a request to extend the non-conforming two-family dwelling use, to extend the non-conforming front setback, and to allow an oversized dormer at 12-14 Stoneleigh Road. We'll hear from planning.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Kat Kemet. And this is a special permit for 12-14 Stoneleigh. For this project, the petitioner proposes to enclose side porches on each story of the existing dwelling, add decks, and construct dormers on the north and south sides of the existing building. The work proposed requires relief to alter and extend a non-conforming use, to extend the non-conforming front setback, and to allow a dormer exceeding 50% of the length of the wall below. In reviewing this request, the council should consider if the site is an appropriate location for the proposed work, which requires relief to alter and extend a non-conforming use, extend the non-conforming front setback, and allow a dormer exceeding 50% of the length of the wall below. If the proposed work will adversely affect the neighborhood, if the proposed work will create a nuisance or serious hazard to vehicles or pedestrians, if access to the site over streets is appropriate for the types and numbers of vehicles involved, and if the proposed extension of the non-conforming two-family use will be substantially more detrimental than the existing non-conforming residential use is to the neighborhood. This is an aerial view of the area, which is a bit north of West Newton and the Mass Pike. The zoning of this property and surrounding lots is single residence 3, that's SR3. And the neighborhood is primarily dwellings. This is the existing site plan. The site currently consists of a non-conforming two-family dwelling on a lot that is 11,021 square feet. Because this is a non-conforming use in the district, the ordinance says that the most restrictive density or dimensional control where the use is allowed by right will apply. So the dimensional controls for a new lot in MR1 apply here. The site has a few nonconformities, including the use, the frontage, and the front setback, which is 26.3 feet where the 30 feet is required here. This is the proposed site plan. The petitioner proposes to enclose side porches on each story, which will be converted into habitable living space. Decks will be constructed on each level and dormers will be added on the north and south elevations. So that's on either side when looking from the street. The project requires relief for the use because it is a two-family in the SR3 district. So the proposed modifications require relief to alter and extend that non-conformity. The maximum FAR for a two-family dwelling in the district on a lot of this size is 0.48. The existing FAR is 0.34, and this work will increase it to only 0.40, so it does not require relief for FAR. This is the front elevation from the street, or the west elevation of the dwelling. The house currently has a non-conforming front setback of 26.3 feet, where a front setback of 30 feet is required. The petitioner proposes a front porch addition here, which will reduce the front setback to 25.7 feet. So a little bit of a change there. Therefore, it does need relief to further extend the non-conforming front setback. And the dormers will be added here in the attic level, and the enclosed porches are on the left when viewed from the street. So they will be visible from the public way. This is the right elevation, or the south side of the house. The dormer on this side does not require relief, and the setback will increase slightly from the current setback, which is 16.6 feet to 17.6 feet. So no relief needed on that front. This is the north side, or the left side when viewed from the street. The decks on the first and second floor will be enclosed to make more habitable space, and new decks will be added on each floor, as well as a spiral staircase. The dormer here is proposed to be 23 and a fourth feet wide, where the plane next below it is 31.08 feet wide. So that's approximately 75% of the width, which is above the 50% threshold. So it requires special permit relief. And the proposed porch and deck on the side will have a setback of 6.5 feet, where it is currently 7 feet. And this is the view from the rear. There'll be no change to the setback here, which is currently 46.5 feet, and no changes to the parking or driveway access at the rear here. Overall, the planning department is not concerned with the relief requested here. The two-family use is non-conforming in the district, but it has been a two-family dwelling for a while, also non-conforming. So contextually, it's not very unusual to have a two-family. And the dormers of varying sizes and orientations are on other two families in the area and single families. So in that context, it's not too different from what already exists in the neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you, Kat. Is there someone here from the petitioner, either the owners or an architect or attorney? Yes, can you come up to that podium right there? Turn the microphone on, which is at the base. What's your name and address?
Does that work? Yeah.
Yes. Hi.
Okay. Hi, my name is Gonzalo Millet, and I live on this property along with my wife, Donna Savitkovich, who's online. And yeah, so we've been the homeowners of this, house for 14 years. And as mentioned, it's a two-family. And our unit is both units, our unit for the second and third floor is a condo, as is the first floor. And my brother and his wife and kids, when they visit, live downstairs. And we're at the point where we need more space because some circumstances have changed. My 87-year-old mother needs a lot of care. And so we've been taking her on, and she's been living with us for several months of the year, potentially going to full time. And yeah, we love the neighborhood. We love the town. So we would really like to be able to stay in this location and in this house. Some of the, just to touch on some of the points there. So for the dormer, the one on the south side it's for code compliant staircase primarily that we want to install. On the north side, that will enable our to have a home office. My wife Donna, she's works primarily from home as a psychologist, and so that'll allow her to see clients in that space while my mother is still in the house, maintaining some privacy. Then the four-season porch, you know, one is fixing, it's run down, like we can't walk on the current decks that are there, at least on our level. And so it's fixing that run-down state. And also accommodating work-from-home situations for me when I need to work from home. And giving out some more space for my mother to, you know, have some relief from the family and so on, as well as being able to enjoy the outdoors year-round, which is very important to my wife, Donna, and she can elaborate. And finally, the front steps. That's primarily to make for, you know, more convenient, but especially safer entrance for everyone, especially for my mother, to widen it and extend it a little bit. So again, we really love the neighborhood and the house, and we'd really like to stay in this area. And thank you for listening to us, and we're open to your feedback. And Donna, if you have any closing comments, feel free.
Yes, Donna, are you interested in speaking too?
No, I think Gonzalo, you did a wonderful job capturing what we're hoping for and I just think there's, we have two families that are echoing a commitment to this project. As his brother and wife live below, and actually his this is my sister-in-law here. So yeah, so I'm definitely looking forward to everyone's feedback. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's nice to put faces to stories, and
Mhm.
we appreciate it, and we like for people to be able to stay in Newton. So thank you very much, and if there are any questions, you'll be here to be able to answer them. Thanks.
Thank you.
Let's ask if there are any members of the public who would like to speak on this. Have you spoken with your neighbors about this, by the way?
Yes, yeah.
Mhm. Yeah.
Pretty much all the abutting neighbors we've spoken to.
And they all seem like very looking at it very favorably. The house is really in need of a lot of work, and I think it's going to be a value add to not just us, but the street and the surrounding houses in the adjoining streets.
Thank you. So if no members of the public want to speak, we'll take it into committee. Sir, you can have a seat, and if there are questions, you can come back up, but
Thank
make
you.
yourself comfortable on those wooden benches. Committee members, any questions or comments on this? Councilor Lucas.
Thank you, Chair. Like with the prior one, this is a fine home addition. I certainly support it, and I know this is your ward, so I will move to close the public hearing when ready and move for approval when ready.
Thank you. Councilor Leary.
Another lovely project, and I'm so happy that there's intergenerational living and that they're improving their space for more people and that they're keeping the house, of course. It looked like there was a spiral staircase on the outside of the house. I thought how fun, but I didn't know if that was really the case. It looked like it. I just wanted.
Yeah, so we added that. One of my wishes upon staying in Newton is having access from the upper floor to the lower floor going out to the back, because we have like very nice gardens that we've taken a lot of pains to improve. And we also thought it was nice because my mother-in-law, who's now less able, she can enjoy that little space back there and then walk down, as opposed to walking all the way from the front to the back. So it just offers a little bit of a more humane and, I don't know, just a flow to the backyard, where from the second floor, and we as a family have like sorted this out, and everybody's really on board with it and sees the value in it.
Sounds great. I love a spiral staircase. So that's all I have to say. Thank you. I'm ready to approve when ready.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Councilor Farrell.
I would just like to say we have visited the site, and I think it's a wonderful example of preserving an existing structure and rehabilitating it and expanding it for current modern day use, and really thank the owners for doing that.
Thank you, thank you, Councilor Farrell. This is in my ward, and usually the ward councilor doesn't make the motion, so nicely my colleague from Ward 2 will make that, but before we get to that, I would like to say that I agree with all the positive comments that have been made by my colleagues about what a nice, reasonable project this is, and we're happy to have you and your extended family staying in the neighborhood. It fits right in. It's very nice. I just wonder, do my other Ward 3 colleagues want to say anything about this? They are not on the committee. Did you have comments you'd like to make on this project?
This is Pam. I support the project. It's just around the corner. Great project. And another, expanding the house that they're in a little bit to stay in the house. It's a great thing to do.
Thank you, Councilor Wright.
Thank you, Pam. Hi.
Likewise, it looks like very nice improvements. I'm impressed that somebody's 87-year-old mother is going to use the spiral staircase. So I used one in Maine. It's
for now, we'll see.
Okay.
All right. Well, thanks for all the comments. I think we can now vote on closing the public hearing. All in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed?
Aye.
No. Let's look at the findings and conditions and vote on the petition.
Yeah, I don't know.
For findings, the site in SR3 is an appropriate location for the proposed alteration and extension of a non-conforming two-family use, extension of non-conforming front setback, and dormer exceeding 50% of the length of the wall below, because there are other non-conforming two-family dwellings in the vicinity that are built to a similar scale. 2, the proposed work will not adversely affect the neighborhood because the front setback will be reduced by less than a foot, which will minimize negative impact to abutting properties. 3, there will be no nuisance or serious hazard to vehicles or pedestrians because the driveway and curb cut will be maintained in the same location. 4, access to the site over streets is appropriate for the types and numbers of vehicles involved. And 5, the dwelling that results from the work proposed will not be substantially more detrimental than the existing non-conforming structure is to the neighborhood because it complies with other dimensional regulations, including the required minimum open space, maximum height, maximum lot coverage, and maximum floor area ratio. And for conditions, we have the standard conditions of plan referencing, building permit, and occupancy.
Thank you, Ms. Kemet. Let's take a roll call vote on Councillor Lucas's motion to approve.
Counselor Block? Counselor Downs?
Aye.
Counselor Farrell?
Aye.
Counselor Kelly?
Aye.
Counselor Leary?
Aye.
Counselor Lobovitz?
Aye.
Counselor Lucas?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Good luck with your project.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next item tonight is number 299-24, which is a request to amend special permit number 24023 to alter the non-conforming front setback at 290 Watertown Street. Planning? I think that might be Elisa.
Yes, hi, my name is Elisa Sandoval with the Planning Department, and I will just share my screen right now. So this is petition number 29924 at 290 Watertown Street. This is a request to amend a special permit 240-23 and to alter and extend a non-conforming side setback. Just a little bit of background on this project. This was a special permit that was granted for the development with 4 residential units in a 3-story 10,735 square foot building in 2023. This is a current petition which seeks to amend the special permit to modify the front setback to move the building slightly closer to the street compared to the previously approved site plan. So the criteria to consider when reviewing this request: the site is an appropriate location for the amendment to special permit 240-23 and the proposed 4-unit 3-story residential development with ground level parking. The amendment to special permit 240-23 will not adversely affect the neighborhood. There will not be a nuisance or serious hazard to vehicles or pedestrians as a result of the amendment to special permit 24-23, and the access to the site is appropriate for the types and numbers of vehicles involved. And this just shows the area where the property is located. The surrounding neighborhood includes a mix of businesses, including restaurants, stores, personal service businesses, multifamily residential developments, and 2-story homes. The development is located in the commercial center of the village of Nonantum on Watertown Street. It is located within the business use 1 zone, and the property abuts other business use 1 zone properties to the west and north, and multi-residence 2 zone to the east. And here is the site plan. The site plan includes 4 residential units. It's 3 stories tall. It's a 10,735 square foot building structure in 3 different buildings. And there is one covered carport and a green roof in between the central area for 2 parking spaces. And this is showing the prior approved site plan that was approved in 2023. And this shows the location of the building next to Watertown Street with an 8-foot front setback. And this is the change in the proposed site plan, which shows the front setback is slightly reduced to 7.3 feet in the front. And this is mainly due to increasing the size of the central carport, the 1-story carport area in the center of the development to increase the width of that. And that was what we heard, that was at the request of an abutter to increase the width of the carport. So this is just showing the elevations, which are similar to what was approved in the site plan in 2023. So this is showing the front elevation on Watertown Street, the rear elevation, and this shows the elevations with the garages facing on the side elevation. And you can see here there are the garages, and shows a section of the covered carport area as well. And here are the elevations to the side, and this is from the left side, showing from the perspective of the side yards, so not abutting the garages. So in terms of the amendment, the proposed amendment doesn't increase the size of the overall development in height or square footage, and the changes to the previously approved site plan seem to be minor, with a small reduction in the front setback, but the front setback is still conforming to the Newton zoning ordinance. So that is all I have for now.
Thank you, Ms. Sandoval. Would the petitioner or a representative of the petitioner like to speak and tell us more about this project?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Lawrence Lee for the petitioner.
Welcome again, Mr. Lee.
Thank you. With your permission, I would like to just share my screen, please.
Yes.
Thank you. All right, can you all see that?
Yes.
All right, so just really supplementing briefly with the planning's petition presentation. This, I think, may be more helpful to sort of give you a sense of the very, very minor changes. So as planning indicated, we have an understanding and an agreement with our direct abutter to sort of widen this gap. And for those, for the city councilors who were not part of the original special permit, may not recall it, we had made substantial changes to the proposal by creating what we're calling the gap, which was, this is the approved side elevations here, Watertown Street being on where the cursor is. And our neighbor is, if we were standing on Watertown Street, is to our left. So this would be her view of the project. This space is what we're calling the gap. And previously it was at 35 feet, 4 inches. What we're doing is that we're widening this by pushing the front portion of the building closer to Watertown Street by 3 feet, thereby widening this so-called gap by about 3 feet. The other thing that we had agreed to do is to so-called clip the gables roof ends in this roof area. So by the way, folks, there is this green roof area that's still in play. You'll see here very, very subtly, there is this clip on both ends of the gable roof, which is different from the approved. And as with pretty much, a lot of the special permits, when you get from design special permit to building permit, there's always minor tweaks here and there because of building code and design consideration. So one of the things that we had done was there was a garage space, which is on the opposite side of this section here. It is a carport So there's still 8 parking spaces. We started off with 8 parking spaces. We still currently have 8 parking spaces, but for architectural and building code considerations, to reduce the bulk and really, frankly, to benefit by adding more sunlight, by having a gap and open space rather than a wall, we felt that that was an improvement to the project. The building permit has already been issued. So if you were to drive up by the site right now, there's construction ongoing. This is more of the detail in terms of what we're proposing now versus what was before. So this is 35 feet 4 inches. Now it's 38 feet 4 inches. This is a side-by-side comparison between what was approved and what is being proposed now. So it's a very, very subtle change. Again, this is being done with an understanding, and this is just going to show the previous solar study that we had done with the last special permit. As you can see, we had widened this gap to produce, to allow more sunlight to get through to this side of the building for our neighbor. And by widening it even more, we're hoping to benefit her. And there are other cursory changes, minor changes, as planning pointed out. They're very, very, very minor. Construction is ongoing, and that's where we stand currently. So if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
Thank you, Mr. Lee, and for being
Thank you.
available. Now's the time we would like to hear from the public. If there are any members of the public, could you come to that microphone, please? See if it's still on.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, I'm actually one of the neighbors in the back of the property on 14
Give us
Cook
your name
Street.
and address, too.
14 Cook Street.
And your name?
My name is Ken.
Last name, Ken?
Zhao, Z-H-A-O.
Thank you.
I have a huge issue with this project, even from the onset. I didn't attend some of the previous meetings on the building permits and special permits. I find that there's a lot of flaws in the engineering plans. I don't think there was any mention that there was a soil fill up to my fence on their property. So they fill about 5 feet of soil around the basement. So the basement for the rear home unit, the basement was basically built on the previous ground level. And what they did was they chucked in a lot of soil and they literally filled up to my fence. So my site from my fence is looking into the garage on the first floor. So the road surface is about maybe a foot below my fence line, and my fence is 6 feet tall. So literally they built 5 feet of soil up to the top of my fence. So my site is actually into the garage, and if there's any vehicle traveling on that access road into the garage, I'll be looking into directly onto the tires and probably underneath their car. So they added about maybe 45 feet of height directly in the back, and it completely blocked out the sky for me. And I don't think this elevation calculation was mentioned in the building permits, so I believe this was an error that was never caught. So the soil is literally 5 feet up to the fence in my backyard. So I don't know how we're gonna address even the safety concerns. So the vehicle is at my eye level. I'm looking at the tire if I look out onto the property. So I don't know how we're gonna block out the exhaust from me literally breathing the exhaust in my face if there was a vehicle traveling in my backyard. So this is one of the items that I really have issues with. The other item I have issues with this property is the drainage issue. Now they added 5 feet of soil fill around the basement and in the back to make the elevation even with the front of the property. I am concerned about all the water from this height coming down to our property in the backyard. So I don't know, I see that there's a drainage plan that they propose, that they have a couple of manholes, and the runoff actually goes into the city sewage. I don't even know if that should be allowed, that the runoff water from this property is drained into the city sewage. The water, the runoff should be contained within the property and should not flow into the neighboring properties because they added so much height and so much soil fill in the back of the property. So the average grade calculation, I think there was definitely a huge error in that calculation. And I don't know if it's an oversight, but I'm looking into the garage for my fence. So their garage is on top of my fence. So drainage is a huge issue. Obviously, privacy is another issue. Their property basically overlooks my entire backyard. I mean, it's a small property, but their garage is on my second level. So it's the same height as my second level, basically. And my first level is, you know, it's basically underground now. And according to the plan, I don't even believe they have conforming turning radius into the garage. It says 17 feet for the turning radius into the garage. I believe 17 feet is not even enough to have an SUV turn into the garage. So, I mean, it's not a safety concern for me, but it's a safety concern for the occupants of the buildings and their own property, obviously. So this is a very tight turning radius, unless you have maybe a Mini Cooper that you can turn into it. I don't know if anybody with an SUV or minivan can actually turn into those garages. That's another issue. So I don't know that special permit obviously is non-conforming. So the roof height is way too high. So this building took up probably 45 feet of in my view of the sky in the back. So when I walk out, I can't even see the sky. They added 45 feet in the back from the previous grade level. And obviously they backfilled the basement. The basement was built on top of the grade, and now it's covered with soil. Obviously the runoff area, the pervious ratio to the coverage area, the house coverage is 10,000 square feet. The lot is only 11,000 square feet. So the ratio is way non-conforming. I don't even know for any residential house that the coverage is like 95% of the lot. So now you're leaving 1,000 square foot of pervious area. The little grass patio that he mentioned is probably not enough for any runoff or drainage into the soil naturally. Other safety concern is obviously, just an eyesore. I have to look, into the garage, and if anybody's wearing shorts, I can actually look up the legs. Like that's how bad the view is from the back. Other than that, I think this project I feel is affected the value of all the surrounding houses. It's way oversized for the lot size of this property. 10,000 square foot, 4 units, 8 car parking spaces. It's excessive for 11,000 square foot lot. It should have been a 2 unit, 3 unit, like other non-conforming properties around the area. So I think 4 units, 5 unit that they proposed originally, they proposed 5 unit. I think that's excessive, and the added soil in the backyard is very excessive. And the use of the generator and the air compressor during the day has created a health concern for me, because I work from home and my ear's been ringing constantly, because I don't know if they have a temporary electrical pole for all the works, but I know they've been running the generator and their compressor all day long from 6:30, sometimes to 7, 8 o'clock at night. So it's quite excessive. The noise is unbearable. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. I think it would be helpful for all of us to hear some response to your long list of concerns.
I'm sorry. Yes, I apologize that I didn't come to the prior meetings because.
No, it's great. It's helpful to have such specifics, but what I would like to do is ask Elisa Sandoval from the Planning Department if she would like to address some of them, particularly around your concerns over the runoff connecting to a sewer, the drainage, some of that, the fill of the height. So I'd like to first give Elisa a chance to address some of your concerns, and then Mr. Lee, I think probably it would be very helpful to hear from you too. Elisa, would you like to go first?
Sure. Well, I know that, so basically in terms of the stormwater, I would, probably want to get in touch with engineering about that in particular. I know that it's not allowed that stormwater to drain onto other neighbors' properties, whether it's allowed to, I think what the neighbor had said that, is it allowed that it goes into the city drainage?
He said
I would
sewer.
have.
You
City
said in
sewer.
the sewer, correct?
Well, according to the approved plan, their runoff goes down into the sewage right now.
It's probably the storm drain.
Yeah, because
Okay,
that
yeah.
is not allowed, so we would need to check on that. It may be going into the city's storm drain, but that's what Ms. Sandoval is saying she would need to check on.
Right. I mean, engineering did review and approve the plans that were provided. So if there is an issue, that would just be something that would need to be clarified with engineering. And then in terms of the, some of the grading that did come up, and I noted it in the memo, the recent memo, that there is fill that was going to be raising the grade of the property at the rear. And that is what the city council has recently addressed, because there is an issue with the height and what the height is after construction versus pre-construction. And so in looking at the site, the grading changes, the grade is raised approximately 4 feet at the rear of the property to make the site level so that it can, it can be developed in that way. So I think, the neighbor is correct in that, in the sense that it is higher than it was before, according to the site plan, by at least 4 feet.
Well, I'd like to have them hire an engineer to calculate the runoff because of this added height. Naturally, I would think that the water would go into the neighbors. It would contact my fence directly. I don't know if they're gonna build a retaining wall to contain the soil, and how they're gonna control the water from running from this height onto the neighboring properties.
Ms. Sandoval said, and we will support this, that we are going to get an engineering review further and more looking into this in discussion. I thank you for your comments. I think that you've covered everything, and I don't want to have a back and forth on every issue, but I would like for the city to be able to respond to some of them. I'd like for the petitioner to, and then we will follow up still. But thank you very much.
Thank you for your time.
Mr. Lee, do you have anything you want to say about some of the comments that this abutter raised?
No, I do not. This is actually the first I'm hearing of it. I'd be curious to know whether our neighbor has asked or raised these questions directly with engineering or directly with ISD when he noticed these issues. And like I said, this is the first time I'm hearing of it.
Councilor Leary. This is her ward, so I'm going to go to her now.
This is my ward, so this is the first I'm hearing of this as well. So I would like to make a motion to hold, because I would like to get back to engineering, and I'd like to look at the site myself. And I'm obviously very, very concerned about any elevation level that we didn't know about. It's been a very hot topic lately, and the impact on this rear abutter is concerning to me, although I wish he had spoken up before, because this is actually an approved project with just this change in it. So that's another thing to talk about. But at
Chair,
this
can I
point,
chime in briefly here?
Who is this?
Attorney
Jonah,
Temple.
yes, Mr. Temple, please.
So I do want to remind the committee that this is an amendment to a special permit. So you're not reviewing this project all over again. You're not reviewing the stormwater system. That's already been, this whole project has been reviewed and approved by the city council. Really, all that is before you now is the proposed change, the amendment. And I would really urge you to limit your discussion and deliberation to those changes. If there are any issues with the approved stormwater plan, that's for engineering to deal with. This is not taking a whole fresh look at the new project right now.
excuse me, Jonah, but 20 Clinton Street was fully approved too. So I'm going to take another look at this.
I'm not sure what that has anything to do with this.
Okay.
Well, I feel if there's safety issues
Oh, excuse
involved.
me,
I'm sorry,
sir.
who's this?
Sir, sorry, you don't have the floor right now. Continue, Councilor Leary.
It's just this raised enough issues with me, even though I understand this is already an approved project. I understand that. But if there are things going on there that we weren't aware of and that didn't comply with our initial approval, we still have some time to look into it at this point. So I'm not prepared to make any changes with what's before us right now and approve it. So I won't be voting for it.
You may make a motion after we continue our discussion. Councilor Block and then Councilor Farrell. I've seen your hand up.
Thank you, Chair. I want to follow up Mr. Zhao's comments on the turning radius and the safety issues regarding the driveway access to this site. Sticking to Mr. Temple's sort of suggestion that we focus on the amendment, this building is being moved forward, so I'd like to know how the moving forward affects the driveway to the right, which is the way in which all the vehicles are going to access this garage. Scott, I sent you a couple of slides earlier today. Could you share the photo of the, I guess it's the western side of the building where the asphalt driveway will be built?
Councilor Block, we don't typically take slides from the committee members, and as we ask petitioners to please submit materials in advance, we have not had a chance to look at these yet. But if you think they are really crucial for our discussion and part of your part, let me finish. Part of our discussion tonight, what we would need to do is poll the committee for a suspension of the rules in order to do that, because that's not normally how we conduct a hearing.
Sure. I was just trying to make it easier for people to follow my comments.
Correct, but we received it late this afternoon, and it's not a typical request. So think about whether you want to request that, and we will do a suspension of the rules and vote on that. The clerk has informed me that that's the way we have to proceed with your request.
Okay. So I request suspension of the rules to show these two slides. One is a photo which I took, and the other is part of the engineering analysis of the turning radius of this driveway, which is part of the documents that we do have access to.
Keeping in mind Attorney Temple's admonition to us to stick with the amendment. So what you're saying, though, is it does relate to the amendment because the moving of the building forward may affect the turning radius or how one enters the driveway.
Yes, that's the point, yes.
Okay. Let's do that. Is there a motion for a suspension of the rules to allow Councilor Block to show some slides tonight? Would anyone like to make that motion?
Second.
Excuse me? Who's speaking? Oh, Councilor Lobovitz, did you just make that motion? I'm sorry.
So moved.
We're having trouble hearing you. I believe Councilor Lobovitz made a motion to suspend the rules in order to see these slides. Is that correct, Councilor Lobovitz?
That's correct. Can you hear me now?
Yes. And Scott, this is the way we need to be doing it, correct? And is it a voice vote? Let's just do a voice vote then. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone? Excuse me? Was that an aye, Councillor Lobovitz?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, we're having a sound problem with you, I think. Is anyone opposed? Okay, can you put up Councillor Block's photos?
I appreciate the committee's
Process.
discretion.
We have to do it the right way.
No problem with the process. That looks gorgeous, but I'm not responsible for that image. Okay, this is what the site looks like right now. Mr. Zhao's house is to the right on the other side of the chain link fence, and the house is to the left, and this is the path of the driveway alongside the house. The garages and the carports are to the left. You'll have to look at a site plan to sort of see where they are, and cars would go down here, turn left, and when leaving, back out and come straight forward. So this was just to kind of orient everybody to what this one issue is related to, both Mr. Zhao's comments and the amendment. Scott, could you just show the turning template, which was provided by the petitioner in response to engineering's request for information showing the turning radius? I just think this is, I mean, I had trouble finding this particular document. Engineering brought it up. There we go. No, not that, the other one. That's it. That's, so I guess you can, yeah. The diagram on the right is the garage in turning analysis, and the diagram on the left is coming out. And what I learned today when I spoke to engineering is that this is generated by computer program. They enter all sorts of data, and then this is what comes out, the lines showing how the vehicles would enter and exit. If you could lower that diagram just a little bit, because at the top there's something cut off that I think is very important. Thank you. That's the size vehicle that's used in generating this, this analysis. And this vehicle is a Ford Escape, and it is 14.83 feet in length, which is probably about an average size vehicle. So I think as we consider the implications of moving this building forward and whatever effect it has on that asphalt driveway to the right, I think a new turning template analysis would be helpful with a somewhat larger car, because not everybody is going to have an average size car. And you can see, especially on the left, the car at the very top that's sort of shown backing out and coming forward. That's the most sensitive spot in all of this, the most difficult spot. And in the first two vehicles on the bottom, you can see they're backing out. It's a little hard to tell from this, but the first vehicle is actually crossing over behind the second vehicle and impinging on its exit. So, of course, they're not going to be exiting at the same time, but if there's any structure, if there's any pillar that's needed at that point, then that car on the front won't be able to back out in that way. And I can't tell if there is anything structural at that point. So this is a very complicated project, and I appreciate that it's been approved by the previous city council, but even this very modest amendment starts to raise all of these other questions. So, and I don't know if the petitioner wants to comment on all of this, but it would, and I don't know what the side setback requirements are here, but it's so close to the right that if this building could be still moved to the left, it would make things a lot easier for potential residents and a lot safer, I think, for everyone. That's
I believe it was said that this building is already under construction.
it certainly is.
Moving the building to the left is probably not possible, but correct me if I'm wrong. Are you asking that if a motion is made to hold this amendment, the consideration of this amendment, that as part of that you would like to see some updated turning radius studies of the garage entry and exit?
Yes, absolutely.
In precision, yeah, there we go. Councillor Farrell.
With all due respect,
Can you speak into the mic?
I'm sorry. With all due respect to Mr. Temple, I guess I would like to know what the process is for checking issues which have surfaced since the construction and since the approval and construction have happened, because I do think there are, even in conjunction with what Councillor Block is talking about, in looking at this, I am not an engineer, but I guess I would like to add to the considerations of where will the retaining wall be that holds up this driveway? The fill right now appears to be virtually on the property line. I don't know how they could possibly put up a 4-foot wall within the setback rules. But I mean, there are lots of issues. So what I'm asking actually is, what is the process to review an already approved project, and does it have to wait until the project is completed when we then go through with inspectors and point all these things out? Or is it better to try to do something while it's in process? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Farrell. We have a couple more hands up. What I hope that we'll do at the end of the comments and around the time we have a motion is go back to Mr. Temple for some guidance on the best way to proceed and to perhaps answer some of your questions. I think it might be a petitioner hand up. We can go back to the public. Perhaps, Nico, is your hand up? You'd like to say something?
Hi, good evening, everyone. And I actually happen to be the owner of this property.
Great. Could
as
you
well
identify
as-
yourself? Could you
I'm
just-
sorry. My name is Nico Gialusis, and I am the owner of 290 Watertown Street. I also happen to be the general contractor. So it is me that pulled the permit. It is me who Lawrence represented when we went through the special permit process the first time. I think that all of the concerns that you or that have been raised thus far are valid. I'm happy to address them. And at the same time, I would also like to go back to what Jonah referenced, which was that there are a lot of we were here tonight for a very specific reason, and that reason was at the direct request of an abutter of ours that we had an agreement with. Otherwise, we wouldn't have filed any of this, and we wouldn't be having this conversation at all. That being said, I am happy to sort of address the other concerns that were mentioned. And I know that construction, while it's in process, can be jarring. And I would just like to, I guess, affirm the fact that, as was mentioned, we are building the house and all of the landscaping and retaining walls and the driveways exactly to the plans that were approved. A couple of things worth noting in the way of dimensions. The house will not be 45 feet out of the ground, even with the 4-foot retaining wall that faces our neighbors to the right. The house actually meets the by right building height of what would be a multi-resident zone. I believe the building height is under 36 feet. So that was sort of number one. Number two is as it pertains to the width of the driveway itself is actually 16 feet wide, which was a direct request of the fire department. So it's not like it's close to the property line. The driveway itself is enough to fit a fire truck. It's also the reason that all the garages and carports were recessed 4 or more feet into the building, is to give anyone backing out more than 20 feet as a turning radius. I would also make the argument that a Ford Escape is a mid-size SUV. So unless someone is trying to drive, a Chevrolet Suburban down here, a Ford Escape is a very reasonable vehicle to be using in comparison. You could use a Subaru Forester or anything similar, which is an average sort of car that a suburban family would have. As far as the water runoff goes, I cannot stress enough that we are not nearly done yet. Yes, we added fill, which is part of the plan. There is going to be a retaining wall that is effectively right on the property line that will remain under 4 feet tall, and that will keep the average grade exactly where it's supposed to be. I understand that something new can be jarring, but it is not going to be anything like the other projects around town that have caused a significant amount of disruption. On the other side of the project, directly to our left, we've actually just brought the grade even with our neighbor. So there's no retaining wall on our neighbor's side. There used to be a big block retaining wall, which is now basically at grade. I also, as far as moving the house forward goes, to be honest, I'm failing to see how moving the house forward would have any impact on a turning radius of a vehicle coming out of a garage. I understand if we were trying to move the house to the left or the right, making the driveway wider or more narrow, how that would affect the turning radius of a car backing out of a garage or pulling nose out of a garage. But simply moving the building frontwards or backwards, the driveway is 150 feet long. So I do not believe that has an impact at all. The other question as it pertains to water runoff. So again, we are not done yet. There is erosion control in place to this day to make sure that none of that happens. I don't believe it's actually happened yet. There was an instance because we did hit a little bit of dirty soil that we had to pump water out of the backyard because we had to dig deeper than was originally planned, which we did get a geotech engineer involved who worked with engineering and our site contractors to make sure that it was all copacetic. We did have to pump a little bit of water into the city sewer for a day, which we got city approval for from the engineer that is in charge of this project. And at the end of the project, there will be not one, but 2 incredibly large and complex underground drainage systems to contain any and all water runoff from this property. And then there was another comment made about the size of the building. I think there was a misunderstanding of the 10,000 square feet. That is not the footprint of the building. That is actually the entire livable square footage of the building itself. The footprint of the building itself is actually significantly smaller. There's no less than 10 or 12 feet on the left-hand side of the building all the way down. The right-hand side of the building is, again, a driveway. There are pervious pavers in the middle. It's part of the reason we're doing the carports to allow water to actually penetrate the ground there. There's going to be a backyard at the rear of the building. And then obviously, again, at the request of one of our direct abutters, we're pushing the building closer to the house, which does not actually, the front building closer to the street, which does not actually have any sort of a significant impact on the water runoff that we need to contain. And I guess if there are any more issues that come up, I am happy to address them. But I can, I guess in closing, I can assure you that we are building everything exactly as how it was approved. And it went through, an extensive review and a lot of back and forth with engineering to make sure it was dialed in exactly to city specs. Thank you.
Thank you, Nico, for explaining some of that to us. I think it was helpful. I'm not sure it will settle everybody's concerns, but it was very helpful. I appreciate it. We still have some hands up from city councilors. We're still in committee. Councilor Lucas. Councilor Wright, I see your hand too. I'll come to you as soon as the committee is done.
Thank you, Chair. I want to hear from Attorney Temple, based
No.
upon, based upon what the gentleman from Cook Street had to say about the stormwater runoff and the dirt being built up to his basement. Should that be best handled through a zoning enforcement request?
Yes, I mean, I'm not hearing or seeing any issue with the fill or the retaining wall. Planning can confirm that, but it sounds like that's all happening according to the approved special permit plans and the ordinances that were in effect at the time. As to water runoff, yes, that should be a zoning enforcement request. Anything else stormwater related, is really, I mean, that would also be an enforcement request, but engineering has approved the stormwater plan. They will do an inspection and do a final approval at the end of the project. So I think those are all covered there.
Okay, so to the gentleman who lives on Cook Street, you would need to file a zoning enforcement request through the city's website, through the Inspectional Services webpage, and that will get the attention of city staff addressing your concerns. I have filed zoning enforcement requests in the past for other projects. It's always best to send videos and pictures along with your request. That is my advice to you on those concerns. Let's see. I want to get back to the amendment, if you don't mind.
No, I think we should.
So the amendment, I don't have an issue with it because reading our planning memo, it says right here in the beginning that the petitioner has stated that this change was made to accommodate the request of an abutter. So the petitioner is moving this forward to, I guess, appease the neighbor to the left of the property. I don't have an issue with that. With respect to the turning radius, have the location or sizes of the parking stalls in the garage, has that changed in any way?
It has not. And and again, I cannot stress enough that if it wasn't for the request of our neighbor, that I literally would not be here tonight, and we would be just building the building as approved.
Okay, so, I mean, I thought coming into this that this was going to be easy. Clearly it isn't. This is, but I don't see an issue with the request to move the building forward. A lot of the things can be followed up through a zoning enforcement request. The occupancy permit has not been issued yet. Obviously, the building is still under construction. So I'm just going to say to Nico, sorry, I didn't get your last name, sir, to continue to follow the plans that have been approved, and if this amendment is approved, that you follow those plans as well. But other than that, I don't know what else to add to this amendment that's in front of us right now. Again, the project has already been approved. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lucas. We have a point of order from Councillor Farrell.
Oh.
I believe that's what I should be calling it. Is the public session still open?
Yes.
And are other members of the public allowed to speak?
Yes.
I mean, it's becoming to me a city council hearing at the moment.
Well,
and I think we should ask the public if they're
we have taken it into committee.
Thank
The
you.
public hearing is still open. I saw a member of the public standing up. I was going to call on him. We have another councillor whose hand has been up, and we will proceed, and I would like it too if we could wrap things up.
Thank you.
Councillor Maliki.
Thank you. I'm kind of confused about a couple of things. During the presentation, so it was pointed out that the request is to come slightly closer to the street, 7.3 feet or so instead of 8 feet. But it was also said that something, I guess the space between the buildings or the roof deck, green roof, whatever, was getting larger by something like 3 feet. So where is the other 2 and something feet coming from?
Address that, and it is a little confusing. The original or the plans that were submitted originally were taking the measurement from the street, from the front of the entryway, the stoop, if you will. And so the building was actually 10.3 feet off the street, and the front of the step was 8 feet. And so so the new request is to move the corner of the foundation from 10.3 feet to 7.3 feet, which is a total of 3 feet exactly. And then in doing so, the gap between the front and rear building would increase by 3 feet. And because the building has to be connected by this green roof, we would thus be expanding the green roof 3 feet. So I do understand why that is confusing, but the whole point of this, and I cannot stress this enough, is to take the front of the foundation or the foundation itself, push it 3 feet closer to the street. And the only reason we're doing that is to make the gap of the green roof 3 feet larger.
So the green roof, and by the way, is it really green or is it artificial turf?
No, it's going to be plantings with drainage
Great,
and
okay.
irrigation up there and everything.
Happy to hear that. So that's getting wider, but not the carport spaces or the parking spaces or garage spaces underneath it. Just the green roof is getting
Correct.
added to. Okay, and so so actually the building is going to be 3 feet closer to the street than it was before, not a fraction of a foot.
Correct. Yes. So the idea is to move it 3 feet closer, 3 full
Okay.
feet, 36 inches.
And I noticed that the plans went by kind of fast, but it looks like on the previous plan, you had landscaping shrubbery in the front and they weren't on the new plan. Are there still going to be shrubs, whatever plantings you had before? Are there still going to be those plantings?
So I apologize for the oversight. Yes, there are going to be plantings, and there is actually going to be a fence on three sides of the property. So the left, the rear, and the right. I'd also like to, I guess, for what it's worth, mention that I have been in constant contact with our direct abutters in the rear and the rear right, which I believe would be the neighbors of the gentleman that spoke this evening. And we have all discussed fencing options, heights, styles, and things of that nature. Our most recent meeting was only about a week and a half ago. And so everyone that is our direct abutters, look, to be honest, I'm trying to be a good neighbor. I'm trying to do the right thing. Again, I don't even want to be here tonight, if we're being honest. I like the building the way it was. We're pushing it forward because we were asked to, and that's fine. But as far as all the neighbors in the rear go, we want to keep them happy as well. They all seem to be on board with the project. They like the progress. They like that we've cleaned up the lot and what it's going to look like after the fact. They like that they're going to be looking at a brand new fence. And we've also talked about, plantings on their property to provide some privacy screening as well as on our property, among various other things. But I apologize for going on a rant. The answer to your question is yes, there will be shrubs in the front.
Thank you again.
And from the picture, it looked like the walls are going up. So is the whole foundation done, or is the foundation in the front not in yet because you're not sure where it's going to be?
Great question. Yes. So because the building permit is approved, and we do have the option right now to just build what I have a building permit for, which is 4 units, the front unit being 10.3 feet off the street. I could just build that with, and I have no reason not to build that if we're being honest. But we were approached by the neighbor, so we petitioned to push the building forward the 3 feet. That being said, the rear building, the foundation is poured, the walls are up, the roof is on, the building is weather tight, and we have actually already passed rough inspection on the plumbing, and we're going for a rough electrical later this week. So, I mean, that building is very much underway. It's not, the size is there, the windows are in. I mean, it is what it is, basically. Like, that building is done for all intents and purposes on the outside, with the exception of landscaping and fencing and things like that.
Okay, so you haven't done the front building's foundation yet, it sounds like.
No.
Correct.
No, we haven't started it at all.
Okay, I think I'm set. Thank you.
Great, thank you,
Thank you.
Councilor Maliki. I don't like to cut off important dialogue, but I'm mindful of the time, and we have 3 more projects to talk about. We have 1 more councilor on the committee whose hand is raised. I hope we can try and wrap this one up. Councilor Downs.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think Councillor Lucas summarized us quite nicely. We are not here to review the stormwater. We are not here to review the turning radiuses. We are not opening up the whole special permit. We are really just looking at a request to accommodate a neighbor. And when I looked at this first, I thought it was fairly simple. I still think it's fairly simple with Attorney Temple's advice, and I think we ought to move forward and vote this tonight.
Thank you, Councilor Downs. Mr. Harrington, did you want to speak at this as a member of the public when you were standing there at the podium?
Madam Chair, my name is Peter Harrington. I'm an attorney. I represent the neighbor who is being accommodated, Christina Cardoso, who resides in the home, owns the home and resides in the home immediately to the east of this project. Is there another member of the public that have their hand up on your screen?
We have
Her
Randy
architect?
Belleville up there. No, not that I see an architect. Mr. Clerk?
Vincente.
Vincente?
Chair, that could be V. Neto, perhaps?
Oh, here's
Hello, can you hear me now?
Yes, could you
Hello?
say who you are, please? We can.
My name is Vicente Nito. I'm an architect and I'm here to represent Christiana. She lives on 286 Watertown Street.
And you're here to talk about this amendment?
Yes, I just have a few questions about some of the decisions in relates to the garage, why it had to be open and turned into a carport. And the other question would be in relation to the clipped corner in the roof. I remember from a previous meeting that it was gonna be more like a hip roof kind of thing that would allow more sunlight to come through and give some more character to the building. And the way it's presented, it's literally nothing. It's just to say that there is a clip. It's just not working for us. It's not what we're expecting, at least. And then the other question, it also relates to the grade level in the rear of the house, but now facing the other side. In the elevation was shown that it would be at the end of the construction only 2 steps, but the way it is constructed now, it looks like it's gonna be more than that. So we wanna just clarification on that as well. But the main thing would be the garage, why it had to open and turn into another carport. We don't agree with that. We think it would be, it would give us less privacy. And we like the way it was closed in before for just things in general would be less disturbance to the eye. I think that would be all.
Given that this amendment is before us because the petitioner is trying to accommodate the desires of your client, correct?
That is what I read on your website, Madam Chairman. However, I would have to report that the petitioner has not been involved in any way in this application for an amendment and not been consulted until she got notice that there was going to be a public hearing. So while I would have to say that the statement that it is being done at the request of and in cooperation with our direct abutter to increase light and flow to their property, it might not be technically correct that this was a concern that she had originally in the presentation of this project. And this project was very complicated, as I'm sure you're aware and you may remember. that this was a business property that was being converted to residential without changing the zone, just going to put residents in and waive the commercial aspect. And her concern had to be with light and air and her view out. And she has no objection to moving the building forward, and she's not here to object to that. However, she does have an objection. And she called me last night, so I'm not 100% familiar with the plans. And as I look at them, and I look at the notice, it says that there are going to be 3 garages converted to carports. Now, I saw one on the plans. I don't know where the other 2 are. But with respect to the one on the plans that I saw, they are opening up the face of the car parking space so that it looks directly into her house. And this was one of the concerns that she had. And part of the negotiation was that they put the garages in so that she would have some protection from people either inadvertently or intentionally looking into her home from a very short distance away. And she is here to object to that. And I make that objection. I also say that I'm not sure that there are any rules that apply to making amendments like this to a petition that was just granted 6 months ago.
Can you speak into the microphone more so we can?
Oh, I'm sorry.
We want to catch everything you say. We still can't hear you.
Now I've turned it off, okay.
You can raise the
I'm
table.
technically inept. Did you hear me say that she objects to the conversion of the garage to a carport?
Yes, sir.
The garage was designed in part to hide the automobiles from the general view, place to store trash cans. It's going to be eliminated now. The car is going to look directly into her house. And you know what the setback is there. I don't have the exact numbers. But she objects to this change, and she considers it a significant change. And one of the things that I had here is that Chapter 30, Section 7.3.3b of your ordinances says the City Council may grant a special permit when in its judgment the public convenience and welfare will be served. Now, I would like someone to tell me what public convenience and welfare is being served here by the creation of a carport looking right into Mrs. Cardoza's home from a distance of 15 or 20 feet. Subsection D of the same section says the City Council shall not approve any application for a special permit unless it finds that said application complies in all respects with the requirements of this chapter. So the two get tied together. So you not only have to find that the elimination of the garage is serving the public welfare or convenience, but you have to find it, and it has to be included in the decision. And I have not heard any argument or statement as to how this is going to benefit anybody, this creation of this garage, the creation of the carport. And I will say that Mrs. Cardoza feels that it is going to significantly harm her building, her home. She's now going to have to be concerned. The reason she was objecting was she wanted to have the light, naturally. But 2, she didn't want to have to keep her shades drawn, her drapes pulled all the time to avoid unintentional, inadvertent, or intentional viewing from a very short distance into her home. I recognize that this is a difficult problem where we're building houses and residential communities so close to each other. In a business zone, there's no setback, and the setbacks are very minimal, and people don't care if you look into someone's office or their store. In fact, they'd like you to look into their store because you might come in and buy something. But this is a residence, and we've got a big towering building beside her residence to the west, and she is concerned about this, and I would hope that you would reject the request to convert garages to carports. Thank you.
Which is part of the amendment. Thank you, Mr. Harrington. We're going to wrap this up. I see Councilor Leary has her hand up. We also have one more member of the public, Mary Lee Belleville. Shall we hear from you and then come back to you, Councilor Leary, for the last word for your ward? Ms. Belleville.
Thanks. I'll be very brief. I raised my hand originally because I was trying to understand why the neighbor to the left had an interest in having the house moved forward. And this last conversation with Peter and the Nato suggests that that was the solution that Nico is offering to her objection, but it doesn't sound like it resolves it. So not sure that this even needs, I mean, if the whole point of this coming before the council was to appease the neighbor, doesn't sound like this is going to do it. Thanks.
Thank you, Ms.
What
Belleville.
it's worth, and not to cut everyone off, but we have a written agreement. I'm here today because we had many meetings with Peter Harrington and Lawrence Lee in Lawrence's office. We went back and forth for what was effectively a year, and even after the special permit was approved, and during the 20-day sort of cooling off appeal period, we came to this resolution. We signed an agreement in writing that said I would do this. And the crux of this entire request was to allow more sunlight to my neighbor's house. And so I find it very hard to believe that exchanging a garage for a carport, which would effectively add more sunlight, would be detrimental in any capacity. Now, you could also make the counter argument that that car in that carport is going to be directly facing a 6-foot privacy fence, which is also on the approved plans. The other 2 carports have been on the approved plan since day one. So I'm not sure where the addition of 3 carports came from. But in any event, I can't stress enough that it wasn't my decision to be here to move the house. The carport we thought was beneficial. And it just seems like I'm fighting a losing battle on no matter how nice I am, it's never good enough. So
Thank you, Nico. I think you've made your points pretty well, and we're really getting close to needing to wrap this up. One more comment, Councillor Farrell, before we go back to Councillor Leary.
Just a quick question, please.
Microphone, please.
Chair, just a quick question, Chair. So the signed agreement included changing the garage to a carport?
No, it did not.
So this was an unexpected change to the abutter.
This was a change because the crux of this was to add more sunlight, and it also will allow us to comply with a building code change. Again, we already have a building permit approved where there is not a carport, so I could just build that. However, because the neighbor has expressed wanting less building massing, more light, basically just less building in general and farther away and everything, we decided to eliminate this again as a betterment, not necessarily not a detriment.
So just to be clear, you signed an agreement with this abutter to provide her more sunlight by expanding the width of the building or the length of the building at some cost to you. The abutter gets more sunlight from that increased lengthening of the building, the city loses a little more open space. But in that, there was no indication that you were going to change another design part of the building that would in fact impact the neighbor.
I can add to that, Nico. Lawrence Lee, again, Councilor Farrell. At the time when we made the agreement, we never had the benefit of diving into the details. So the main crux of it, as you have stated, is accurate, widening the green roof area, pushing the building forward. And then with that, as you go transition from a special permit to building permit, there are always ancillary minor changes that have to be made to accommodate building code, which is not always flushed out. So the transition from moving from a special permit to the building permit phase and accommodating the pushing of the building forward created design/building code issues that we didn't even know about at that time. So it would have been impossible for us to accommodate or anticipate that. So what I think the merits of this petition, which is an amendment, is very simple and straightforward. We have 4 residential units. We have 8 parking spaces. That was originally approved. That's what we have currently. That has not changed. To the extent that there may be some perceived issues, that can be addressed with very, very simple measures. As Nico pointed out, there's already a 6-foot privacy fence. There's always the utilization of landscaping and other design features that can mitigate what is perceived and claimed detriment. And I don't want to, I'm using the word relitigate, but we're not here for that. As Attorney Temple pointed out, the scope of this petition, which is amendment, is very narrow. And we really urge and ask the City Council to focus on that and to vote on that alone. The other matters that have been raised, again, can be addressed with the help of the Planning Department. The other issues that were raised, as Councilor Lucas rightly pointed out, can be addressed by other municipal departments and other venues. So I ask that you look at the merits of this very, very simple change. To the extent that there may be other ancillary changes, again, that all comes from the transition from special permit to building code, construction drawings, and couple that with the requested change. That's what happened.
Let me just respond, if I may, quickly. I think it is simple, and that is that you agreed, and with the abutter, to widen the light space on top. It is not, in my opinion, a minor change to go from a garage to a carport where there is open space. You don't ever know what someone is going to be storing in that open space, where the neighbor is going to have to pay attention to garbage as well as cars, whatever, lawnmowers, whatever. Well, there isn't any lawn, so I don't have to worry about that. But it's not a minor change, and I think it is simple. The abutter asked for a change, you agreed to it, then you made something that is not a minor change again. And the abutter saying, that wasn't part of the deal. Thank you very much.
Okay, please, no applause, please. Councilor Leary.
This has become much more complicated than I initially anticipated with the moving the building forward. So I'm wondering if perhaps we need the Ward 1 councilors and the developer and his attorney and Mr. Harrington, perhaps we could, do we need the time to maybe go over this this agreement? And I'm very aware that Nico came here at the request of the abutter for more sunlight. And that he doesn't have to make this change. He doesn't have to be for us tonight. He's got an approved project ready, that's already underway. Councillor Lucas has already discussed other options to make some minor changes or to take a look at some of the concerns that have been raised tonight. So my intent was, I had made initially a motion to hold, and my intention was just for us to give us a little more time to discuss this further and whether or not we're going to go forward with this amendment. My understanding is that you could withdraw it as well and just continue with the project as is and not be coming before us at all. I just want to ask our attorney if that is correct.
Our attorney or their attorney?
Our attorney, the city's attorney.
Mr. Temple.
Mr. Temple.
Is the question, can they withdraw or can they
just
you hold this?
Yes. Can they just withdraw this? That would be one option for them, would be to withdraw it and go on with the project as it is.
Correct.
Okay.
If
So I'm still on.
Yes,
still have the floor.
Councilor Larry still has the floor, and I have a clarification question I'd like to ask or clarify with Mr. Lee, but go ahead, Councilor Larry.
So what I would propose is we could do a motion to hold to give us time to just, if we need further time to clarify this written agreement, if that would be helpful.
That's what I wanted to ask Mr. Lee, who I think I heard just state clearly that he would like us to please vote on the amendment tonight. Mr. Lee, is that what you were saying?
Yes, that would be our preference to have a vote taken up tonight, just because my client, as you've heard, he's delayed the construction of the front portion of the building for this, based off of this amendment. So that would be our preference if we can try to wrap it up tonight, if we can, please.
Councilor Lobovitz, do you want to add something to this?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. What I thought I heard from the contractor was that they were happy with the original permit, and they were doing this to work with a neighbor constructively. Now I'm hearing, if I understand it correctly, the neighbor does not like this plan. So the neighbor does want to go forward if the carport is open and regardless of the fence and everything, the neighbor would still want a garage there. That was added, the carport opening was added later because of other rules. It just seems to me we have two interests here that essentially agree that we should not move forward with this amendment. And I think if the attorney is looking for an agreement or a decision tonight, then the evidence suggests that we should reject the amendment and move on from here. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Lobovitz. Councilor Leary, back to you. Do we still have a motion on the floor?
In light of everything, the discussion that we've had tonight, and the reality is that this is an approved project with an amendment before us that was at the request of an abutter. And
Point of clarification.
yes, sir.
I would like to reiterate and say once again that this particular amendment was not brought as a result of any participation by the abutter or request by the abutter made after the special permit was granted. It is a look back at what the petitioner wanted prior to the granting of the special permit, selecting a particular point and using it. I am not sure that the petition should be doomed. I'm not aware of what the building code complication is. As I said, I only became involved in this last night, but it seems to me that if we knew what the building code violation was, we would know why they need a carport. The proposal to bring the project forward was an initial proposal by the developer, and why they brought it back was not at the request of the petitioner. I mean, at the neighbor. The neighbor is not concerned about how close to the street the building is or how far back. So it's either a building code problem or it's a change of decision by the builder as to what they want to do, but this is not being brought in behalf of the neighbor.
Thank you, Mr. Harrington.
If
So
that's
what we
clear,
had
and if it's
before-
not clear, I could speak for another 20 minutes on it.
You
I
don't
think
need to. We're all done with this. I am all done with this tonight. What we have before us is a request by the petitioner for an amendment to a previously granted special permit, which they felt was in response to the neighbor who you represent, Mr. Harrington, yet that neighbor is not happy with the amendments being put forth. What we have tonight is an amendment to vote on. If we vote on that and we do not pass it, the neighbor, your client, will be living with the special permit as it was previously granted. That's what it looks like to me at this point. That's, after all this we've talked about tonight, that's what I think this is coming down to. I think we're probably going to have a motion to either hold or approve or reject this amendment.
One of the three.
One of those three. I thought you had said you were going to make a motion. I didn't know you had. Do you think you actually made, did she actually make the motion to hold, or did she say she was going to make a motion to hold? And what are you going to do now?
I think I was going to make a motion.
I think so too. I don't think you made a motion, but now would you like to make a motion? And which of those three ways would you like to go? Would you like to make a motion to approve this amendment, and we will vote on that and see what happens?
Well, it doesn't seem like the motion to approve, Lucas?
Sorry,
Yeah.
I'm listening.
I'm trying to think about a way to give the petitioners and the abutters a little more time to get on the same page. And I don't know whether that's going to happen or not. So I have to tell you, I don't know what I'm going to do right now.
Councilor Lucas, what would you
so-
like to do?
so I-
With all due respect, everyone, and not to cut anyone off, but I can't stress enough that the only, I
Is
have
this
a building
Nico?
permit-
Hold on.
Yes, I'm
I'm
sorry.
sorry, Nico, you do not have the floor right now.
So.
Councilor Lucas has the floor.
Thank you, Chair. This petition is a mess. It is. And it's not on the petitioner. It's not on the abutter. It's just everything about tonight has been a mess. What I would recommend is that Mr. Harrington and Mr. Lee and Nico get on the same page, please, with this 3 feet moving the building forward. Find out if you want to go forward with the amendment. Find out if you want to withdraw the amendment. But we can't take up well over an hour on moving a building 3 feet. It is not a good use of our time here. So I will make the motion to hold. Thank you.
If you second.
The motion has been seconded. Let's vote.
Counselor Block,
Aye.
Counselor Downs,
Aye.
Counselor Farrell,
Aye.
Counselor Kelly,
Aye.
Counselor Leary,
Aye.
Counselor Lobovitz,
Nay.
Counselor Lucas.
Aye.
Motion passes.
That was exhausting. Nico and the attorneys, and the petitioners, I hope you can please get together. And if you'd like the help of the Ward 1 counselors, I believe Councilor Leary offered to help with that. This was a roundabout, frustrating discussion tonight, and I hope that you can all reach some conclusion that will help us move forward. Okay, the next one, number 300-24, request to amend a special permit 392-22 at 120-126 Norwood Ave.
Would you like planning to go first, Chair?
Yes, I would love planning to go first.
Sure. Sorry for the delay. Hopefully folks can see my screen in a moment. Oh, okay. Great. This is Kat Kemet for the Planning Department. This is petition 300-24 for 120 Norwood Avenue. The site has 4 single-family attached homes in 2 separate buildings. This project was approved by special permit in 2022, and it was granted relief for several aspects of the project, including the single-family attached use, the number of stories, the location of the driveway, and a waiver of 2 parking stalls. Condition 11 in their existing special permit limits the number of resident vehicles allowed to park on the site to 6. The petitioner now seeks to remove this condition and allow the creation of 2 additional parking stalls on the site. It also needs relief for the location of those 2 stalls, which will be within 20 feet of a lot line. In reviewing this request, the council should consider if the site is an appropriate location for the proposed amendment that would allow parking within 20 feet of a lot line. The amendment that would allow parking within 20 feet of a lot line will adversely affect the neighborhood. If the proposed amendment will create a nuisance or serious hazard to vehicles or pedestrians, if access to the site over streets is appropriate for the types and numbers of vehicles involved, and if literal compliance with the parking requirements is impracticable due to the nature of the use or the location, size, depth, shape, or grade of the lot, or that an exception would be in the public interest or in the interest of safety or protection of environmental features. This is an aerial view of the neighborhood. The property is located on Norwood Avenue in the multi-residence 1 zone in Newtonville. The MR1 zone extends outward in all directions with some MR3 across Norwood Ave to the north where Cabot Village Park, and public use to the southwest where Cabot Elementary School is. The area is predominantly residential with a mix of mostly single and 2 family uses, and it is located less than half a mile from the Newtonville MBTA station and Newtonville Village Center. This is the existing site plan. The site is located on a 24,897 square foot lot, and it's improved with 4 single-family attached dwellings in 2 separate buildings. The site has 1 curb cut along Norwood Avenue, which provides access to the paved driveway. Each unit has its own private garage with space for 1 parking stall, and the 2 units closest to Norwood Ave, so it's units 1 and 2, each have 1 additional parking stall in front of their garages for a total of 6 parking stalls on the lot. And the site is relatively flat. This is the proposed site plan. The petitioner proposes to amend their existing special permit to remove condition 11, which limits the number of vehicles allowed to park on site to 6. The petitioner would then construct 2 additional parking stalls for a total of 8 on the site, with 2 available to each unit. To accommodate these 2 new stalls, the petitioner will expand and reconfigure the existing parking and circulation on the site. The petitioner proposes to widen the rear portion of the driveway and add 1 parking stall measuring 9 by 19 feet in front of unit 4, which is the one furthest from the street, and another stall measuring 9 by 21 feet in the widened portion of the driveway parallel to the western lot line here. A special permit is required to allow the 2 proposed stalls within the western side setback. If approved, the work will increase the amount of impervious paving on the site by a little over 1,100 square feet, but no relief is needed for open space or for lot coverage. The petitioners this afternoon have submitted a revised plan indicating the use of cobblestones or permeable pavers for some of this proposed parking, so that could impact the open space. But we haven't taken a closer look at that yet. So overall, the department notes no major concerns for the work proposed. Creating 2 new stalls will negate the need for the waiver for 2 parking stalls that the special permit currently has. We do want to note, however, that the new stalls will increase the amount of impervious paving on the site, and that when this project was initially approved 2 years ago, the reduction in parking was discussed in detail, and it came out of a revision through the public process, and that the reduced parking was something that members of the public and the committee were specifically in favor of at that time. So that is about it for now, but happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Kemet. Let's hear from the petitioner.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. For the record, my name is Terry Morris, and I'm the attorney representing Mr. Sean Leary, the petitioner. I have offices at 57 Elm Road in Newtonville. Thank you, Ms. Kemet, for your comprehensive summary of the petition to date. I just want to share with the committee some background. As was noted in the report, when this was first discussed in 2022, there was talk about whether we should have 8. We did, in fact, provide 8 spaces. During the course of the deliberations, there was some concern about whether cars should be on the site or the volume of traffic, given the fact that the Carbet School had recently been renovated, and now traffic patterns had been changed, and the people were still dealing with the effect of those changes. And that spilled over when our project came on the public view. At the same time, both Trio and 28 Austin Street in that same year came online for occupancy. And I think everyone was surprised when there was, in the course of other petitions, there was an evaluation made of the parking requirements relative to those projects, and people were surprised to find out that, in fact, although they were required to provide 2 spaces per unit, they only were using, in effect, 1. I will admit that we got caught up in the euphoria of that, and I said to my client, well, maybe we can get away with 1 less parking space for each of the last 2 units. Sean, being a builder and not a developer, was more inclined to take my advice than not. As it turned out, in retrospect, my use of the multifamily rental projects, and the lifestyles that people have who occupy those buildings is really not applicable to the current situation, which is essentially townhome development. This is a big lot, 24,000, almost 25,000 square feet. The effect they have is two-family dwellings on this large lot. So the density is not really an issue. If you walk the streets of this neighborhood, you know that it is virtually and entirely two-family dwelling, and every house has at least 2 cars per parking space, in some case more. So we come before you basically looking to restore the 2 spaces, and we understand that we tried to do it with a minimum of expansion of the hardcover. As a result, I think on the plan that was shown, there was a certain strip of land that was being added to the site plan. We initially didn't call out how that was going to be treated, and so therefore today, I think actually we benefited from a site visit yesterday with 2 of the councilors, and we came to an understanding that if we would put impervious pavers in that area hardscape, we would certainly counteract any effect it would have by increasing the hardscape by 1.5%. I would call your attention to the fact underlying this whole project, 2-family houses built on this site can have a lot coverage of up to 30%. Attached dwellings, which what we did, are restricted to 25%, but in reality, this project is at 17.75% lot coverage. In addition to that, despite the irregularity of the site and the challenges of providing the required setbacks from the neighbors, since we are embedded within a neighborhood, we achieved all of those 25-foot setbacks in the first go-round, and thereby achieved a project that we think met the spirit of the development. So we're here before you to basically restore those two spaces. We've had some limited exposure to the marketplace, and obviously there appears to be quite a need, as one would expect, for the two units in the back to have two parking spaces associated with them. And that's entirely consistent with the use of the neighborhood. Unlike a multifamily rental project several stories high, these kinds of buildings basically in a neighborhood like this is really something that's likely to attract families with children, and we all know that those families are very much dependent upon two automobiles in the use of their lifestyle. So that's really the substance of our petition, Madam Chair, if I'm here to answer any questions. I also should point out that, as Councilor Lucas knows, in June of 2022, this project began with a Saturday morning meeting with all the neighbors in attendance. So as we did then at that time, when this amendment came up, my client basically reached out personally to each of the 8 property owners who own property directly abutting the site to engage them in what was happening. We're pleased to report that the one abutter who is most impacted by this, the location of where we are putting that parking space, has communicated with you their feelings on the matter, which we think are positive. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Morris. Any comments from the public? And thank you for staying available if there are any more questions.
Took a nap.
Ms. Belville?
Thank you, Mary Lee Belville. If I can paraphrase Attorney Morris, basically they negotiated for the special permit by giving away 2 parking spots. And now they're saying that, well, we really need the 2 parking spots because that's what the market demands. And that's what families would need, although the kids that are living in this house would walk to Cabot School. This is just really a fundamental, what does the city stand for? Because I believe that the direction the city is going in is to reduce parking spaces. And I don't understand what has been the rationale that's been offered, why they need to add 2 more parking spaces. We talked a lot about in the last project that an approved permit is an approved permit. So no do-overs.
Thank you, Ms. Belville. Jeannie Fairley?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Welcome.
Hello. I'm here not in my capacity as a city employee, but as a resident, direct abutter, and quite affected by this petition. I also agree with the last speaker. I sit in on a lot of these things for other reasons, not personal reasons, and I believe that this is a transit-oriented, whatever that term is, dwelling for dwellings. And I think in many situations, and I'm not going to talk about a big multi-rental place or anything, we have been trying as a city to reduce the parking, the hard top, the hard surface in many locations. If you look at the plans, you can see that these 2 buildings have been oriented weirdly. Instead of facing the street, they go left and right against Norwood, and they come right up in behind my house. We are in a 2-family. We have the space for 2 cars. I don't even own a car, and I am not happy with this petition, nor should we be thinking that we should keep increasing, that's more spaces. I dare to say that this is a bait and switch, that they got the building permit, they got the special permit, and now they're coming back for what they really wanted, which was the 8 spaces. The other thing is we were hoping that some of these, and this wasn't by right, but some of these smaller developments would be small, affordable, and each of these units go for a little under or exactly $2 million. They're huge. They're 3-bedroom plus, and it just doesn't make sense to me that we should be caving in or approving a petition that's asking for more parking spaces. We were not caught up in that euphoria that Attorney Morris refers to. The same concerns remain, not just for abutters, direct abutters, but for the influx of more cars. We're in a very small little neighborhood. Norwood Avenue dead ends into Cabot Park. Norwood, you can swing right to Bridges. It's one way. That's how small everything is. My street, they don't even allow parking on one side of my street. And then there's Parkview, which is almost not a street. It's almost a parking lot for Cabot School. So we're talking a really small area and a really small space. And there's, as far as I can tell, there is no need for adding more parking spaces to this development. There was more than 40 people on the call in June, July, August, September of 2022. They were all community members. Many of them, I'd say 1, 2, 3, 4, at least 8 or more were direct abutters, maybe even more than that. So please listen to the community on this petition. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Fairley.
Madam Chair, if I might, it's not my purpose to engage in crosstalk with Mrs. Cohen.
Speak into the microphone a little more if you can.
It's not my intention to engage with crosstalk with either Ms. Belleville or the last speaker. But I strongly object to the suggestion this is a bait and switch. I stand here before you acknowledging that I gave my client some advice which turns to be not accurate because the prototype does not apply in this situation. The previous speaker would certainly remember what was there on this property before. It was an eyesore. She sits on a lot that's almost 14,000 square feet, and her backyard, which is entirely open, is open to our lot. We are 25 feet from her lot line, and we are almost 50 feet from the lot line to her house. So, as I said, I would rather stand on the suggestion that this is in the public benefit, because there was a debate last time about whether it was more important to have the cars off the street rather than which would reduce the potential for having them park on the street. It is particularly difficult to access property on Norwood Avenue from Harvard Street without having to go down and make a U-turn and come back and park on the north side because there is no parking on the south. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Morris. Point, counterpoint. I too remember that conversation. I'm sure Councillor Lucas does too, and there were both sides of it. There were many people who wanted more parking on the site in order to keep the cars off the street for the kids walking to school. There were two sides of it. Any other members of the public? Anyone in this room would like to speak to it before we bring it to committee? No? Councillor Downs.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I remember that discussion very clearly. And I remember the concerns about traffic to and from Cabot School and where those cars on Norwood Avenue would go. I just want to once again remind my colleagues that we are facing a climate emergency. And according to the best studies we have on parking and urban development, I will quote, "Parking built into houses and apartments is a greater predictor of car use than density, transit, or any other neighborhood attribute, period." If we want more people driving on our streets, we should add more off-street parking spaces. If we would rather that we become walkable, livable neighborhoods, we should not be approving more off-street parking spaces. I will be voting no. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Downs. Councillor Lucas.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Morris, I have a question for you as it relates to this project overall. After your client received the special permit, I guess that was a year and a half ago, to build 4 townhomes with 6 parking stalls. And I know initially your client wanted 8 parking stalls, which is why you're here now. But after it was approved with 4 townhouses and 6 parking stalls, I remember during the special permit hearings that the by right option was on the table. After your client received the special permit, he made a decision to go forward with the special permit, but not the by right. I was just wondering if you know how come he didn't go with the by right option.
I can't answer that question. I don't remember that the by right option was seriously considered, since all along he had wanted to basically build this. A by right option, when it's presented in the context of land use hearings, is virtually presented as a situation to give people understand, if this is not approved, this is what could be. That's the context in which a by right option is offered. Not necessarily that that's where the petitioner wants to go, but that's where people should be aware of what could happen if in fact the project's not approved.
Okay, but I mean, I do recall the by right option maybe not being on the table, but being discussed.
Well, yes, I admit that it was discussed in the context we're just talking about.
Yeah.
A contextual context, not as an actual avenue that the client wanted to pursue.
Okay. All right. I just had to get that question out of the way because that's something that was on my mind during the special permit hearing from a year ago. And when I first heard maybe a month or month and a half ago that this was going to be coming forward. Speaking of the by right option, the by right option here, that's something that we look at when we do special permits, is how does your client get 2 parking stalls with the by right option, assuming this is rejected, just assuming it's rejected. They would park on Clarendon or Norwood Ave. Parking is allowed on those streets, right?
Parking is allowed on those streets, that's correct.
And something that I did mention a year and a half ago was that I did reference the overnight parking ban. And the overnight parking ban could be repealed, what's that, 15 months from now? We're going to have a referendum on it. So if it is repealed, and whoever buys those last 2 condos, they could park on the street. And they could park on the street year-round. I, for one, would like to see the cars parked on-site on, I think you said permeable pavers? Is that what you're going to go with?
That's correct.
Not cobblestones?
The cobblestones are shown on that portion of the portion that, the strip of land that we had to expand to accommodate the turning radiuses. So it was felt that the cobblestones were more an attractive alternative than simply having asphalt against green, against plantings.
Yeah. Okay.
It's more of an aesthetic feature.
Okay. So I am, this is, I thought this was going to be the tough one and we would spend a lot of time on, not the prior petition that was before us. But I am okay with the 2 additional parking stalls on site because I want to keep the cars off of the street because I know that is something that many folks don't want to see. And I also want to point out that we did receive a letter from the 2 closest abutters on 10 Clarendon Street in Newtonville, who are the direct abutters, the ones closest to the parking stalls. They did send us, or you did deliver an email to us at the start of this meeting saying that they are they are supportive of the parking stalls. So I am in favor of adding the 2 stalls. Thank you.
Madam Chair, if I might give you some more information, which is prompted by Councilor Down's observation about parking. I think you would be pleased to know that EV charging stations have been installed at each of these 4 garages. So the extent to which there's more vehicular activity, people are encouraged to basically use EV vehicles, which certainly helps the environment.
Thank you, Mr. Morris. Councillor Block.
Thank you, Chair. I will try to be brief. I have yet to see any evidence that traffic is controlled by the number of parking spaces we authorize, because people will take ride shares instead if they need to get to places, and people will need to get to places that they can't walk to or choose not to bicycle to. So I think this debate, frankly, is sterile. And the marketplace is telling this developer that the people who want to live there are very likely to have 2 vehicles. And I see no reason why we should try and dictate lifestyles to people who want to live in Newton. So I will be supporting this and voting in favor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Block. Any other? Councillor Leary?
I certainly share Councillor Down's concerns about this. If I had been on land use when this project was approved, I would have been very concerned about 8 parking spaces. As much as I appreciate Councillor Block's remarks, I think we're on the opposite side of the fence regarding the impact of parking and driving. And as Councillor Downs mentioned, climate change is our biggest thing. And one of the biggest things that is mentioned is we need to drive less. And even EVs, one of the biggest complaints that I receive, and I'm sure many of my colleagues also get it, is congestion and traffic. And this is near a school. It is a busy area. It's congested. It's also near the commuter rail. It's walking distance to a village center. I have found that it's so much more pleasant. I purchased an e-bike, and I commute by e-bike into Boston 5 days a week. So we do work to shape people's lifestyles through our zoning process, and also the fact that if you provide more parking, people will bring more cars. I've seen that. It just goes against all my principles to have an approved special permit with 6 spaces and for the petitioners to come back and ask for 2 more. And I'm sensitive to the needs. I'm familiar with that neighborhood, to the concerns of the folks there. I know this was a controversial project when it was first built. So I just cannot vote for this. So I will be voting no.
Thank you for explaining your reasons. Councillor Farrell.
Thank you, Chair. I will be voting for this. I understand the concerns of Councilor Leary and Downs about traffic, parking, and encouraging more cars. I frankly think right now we are going to have cars, and it would be better for the city of Newton to encourage people to do electric cars instead of the emission spewing current cars. I applaud the developer for installing charging ports in the garages. The city, we need to have a very serious conversation about the need for housing, the lack of transportation, public transportation to much of that housing in this city, the need for housing, for parking appropriately placed to encourage the small business districts we all want to see flourish, and to help to solve the environmental problem. I think In this instance, the developer's done a magnificent job. I really do. We visited the site yesterday. I think it's handsome. As we had discussion in another issue, that we shouldn't be telling the businesses of the community what kind of parking they should have. If the developers, the business people in this instance are saying to sell these houses, which we need housing, then we should listen to that. And if they need 2 parking spaces to do it, then I think that's what we should listen to. But I really look forward to a conversation with Councilors Leary and Downs and everybody else on the City Council about the 4 combined issues of housing, transportation, parking, and environment. I think it's critical. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Farrell. I agree with everything you said. I think we are trying to encourage fewer cars in the city. We cannot force the market to do what we think. I agree with a comment that Attorney Morris made earlier, I believe, which is that this location isn't the same as Austin Street or Trio, where people are choosing to move to those developments already thinking about being car less or car light. This is a little further out, and right now we know that the commuter rail is not the most reliable way of getting around. So I appreciate that the neighbors, Susan and David, wrote a letter, who are most directly impacted, as well as Ginny Fairley, and it seems they live in the same home, but they disagree on this, who supported it, and that you're going to do pervious paving over there. I think that really changes it. I will vote in favor of allowing these 2 spots. Ms. Fairley, is your hand still up from before, or did you want to speak again?
Whether my neighbor upstairs is in support, my neighbor at number 14 Clarendon, and I am at number 12 Clarendon. I am on the ground floor, and this is just more exhaust. These people look into my, I don't have a backyard. I have a little tiny postage stamp side yard and postage stamp front yard. The only thing I have in the back is a garage for 1 car. There's almost no space for anybody else, and same with my neighbor upstairs. So I am a direct abutter. I am correcting Mr. Morris, and I prefer that I would always get a chance to say that. I'm sorry that I did not give my address. Yes, I'm in a 2-family, and only 2 cars are allowed here, and I don't understand why 6 cars are allowed for 4 families. New construction, and they will actually add exhaust to my small backyard, garage, and area. So I'm not the only one who objects to this. Everyone is just tired of this, and I offer to show up. and number 14 and myself, at this point, we're both homeowners, and we object to all of a sudden now coming back with this could have been a by right. It could have been, it was a home, family home, and a little apartment over a garage. 2 units was by right. And we were hoping that that's exactly what would have happened. Instead, we have this, and now we have more parking and more cars and more exhaust, idling, very close to the fence of my property. So I just wanted to clarify that for all of the counselors.
Thank you again, Ms. Fairley.
Thank you.
I see that Councilor Lobovitz, who has not spoken yet on this petition, who's on the committee, has his hand raised, so let's hear from him next.
Can you hear me again?
Yes, we can.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was so-called on the fence on this, but I am moved by the abutters who object. And I want to echo the sentiments of Councilor Leary as well. So I will be voting against this. Thank you.
Thank you for speaking. Julia Maliki.
Thank you. So I'm not on the committee, so I don't get to vote tonight, but I have to say that Ms. Fairley took a lot of the words right out of my mouth, specifically bait and switch, which was my first thought. I recall the discussion when this was originally approved and the weighing the number of parking spaces and pros and cons. But the bottom line is that's what got approved. And to me, I think a lot about market affordability. And to me, whether it's 3-bedroom, whatever, with one parking space guaranteed is going to be more affordable than something with two parking spaces guaranteed. And if the developer here can't sell a 3-bedroom unit in Newton, walking distance to Cabot School, walking distance to the Green Line or this commuter rail for what it's worth, can't sell it with one parking space, the price is too damn high. So I don't see it's necessary to add another parking space to go with the unit. If you're going to create any pervious pavement parking areas, it ought to be for visitor parking so that visitors could come in the winter if the overnight winter parking ban is not overturned. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Maliki. Ms. Belville? Is your hand up again?
Yeah, I just wanted to, a quick follow-up because I wanted to be clear on my previous comments. I actually don't disagree with Councilor Block or Farrell that we may be deluding ourselves in thinking that 2 parking spaces in Newton, as you correctly point out, Councilor Kelly, we don't have a very reliable transit system. But you know, we voted on MBTA based upon that we do have a reliable transit system. I just really, it's more the bait and switch piece that really sits with me. So if we're going to acquiesce and give them the 2 parking spots, which were a negotiating point, what are they giving back in return? Because that's what it's all about. It's all a negotiation. And, you know, it was approved based upon that. So if the city's going to turn around and say, okay, you can have those 2 spaces, then what does the city get back in return? Thanks.
Thank you. Councilor Lucas?
Thank you. I will move to close the public hearing and move for approval.
Thank you. All in favor of closing the public hearing, please say aye.
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 Anyone, anyone opposed to that? Yay. Let's take a look at whatever we need to know about the findings and conditions to approve this. Kat? Yeah, thanks.
Yeah. So for findings, 1, the site is an appropriate location for the proposed amendment to allow parking within 20 feet of a lot line because constructing 2 additional parking stalls will eliminate the need for the existing waiver of 2 parking stalls. 2, the amendment to allow parking within 20 feet of a lot line will not adversely affect the neighborhood because the additional parking will be screened from abutting properties. 3, the proposed amendment to allow parking within 20 feet of a lot line will not create a nuisance or serious hazard to vehicles or pedestrians because the curb cut will be maintained in its current location and orientation, and the additional parking will be set back from the street. 4, access to the site over streets is appropriate for the types and numbers of vehicles involved. And 5, an exception to the parking requirements, which do not allow parking within 20 feet of a lot line, is in the public interest because locating additional parking elsewhere on the site would likely require a greater increase in the amount of impervious paving. And for conditions, the conditions that apply in the previous special permit would be carried over. So it's plan referencing, occupancy, and condition 11 would be removed, allowing for the 2 additional stalls on site.
Councilor Lucas?
Thank you, Chair. Do we need a condition for the cobblestones and permeable pavers?
That will be reflected in the updated site plan. So that will be referenced,
All right,
showing that
Thank you.
it has its materials.
Good that we've got that covered. Let's take a vote.
Counselor Block,
Aye.
Counselor Downs,
No.
Counselor Farrell,
Aye.
Counselor Kelly,
Aye.
Counselor Leary,
No.
Counselor Lobovitz,
No.
Counselor Lucas.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Close call, but it passed. Our next item is number 298-24, a request to allow 3 attached single-family dwellings in 2 buildings and associated parking waivers at 56 Chapel Street. Planning?
Hey, good evening, Joy O'Donoghue. I'll be representing planning on behalf of this petition for 56 Chapel Street to construct 3 single-family attached dwellings in 2 buildings. If you'll pardon me, there is a significant number of items of relief requested, so I'll go by these in a little bit of detail. So the first one is to allow attached single-family dwellings, which by itself is a use that requires a special permit. The second is to reduce required lot area, which since the lot is under 15,000 square feet and the lot is 9,478 square feet, that requires a special permit. The next is to reduce the required frontage. It requires 80 feet. They have 68 feet as the lot is. The next is to reduce the required lot area per unit. It's 4,000 square feet of lot area as a minimum for single family attached, and as proposed, it's 3,159 square feet per unit. Next is the reduced required side setback, which is required to be 25 feet on the sides for single family attached. The front building, as it is in 2 buildings, there are different side setbacks, has 8.2 feet on the smaller side. And then for the rear building, it is 7.7 and 7.8. And then for the next one, it is to exceed maximum lot coverage, which would be 25% for the maximum, whereas it proposes 25.8%. The next, these are all, the remainder of these 7 items are all created by the requirements for parking facilities of more than 5 units, as there are 6 parking stalls required for the 3 units. There are additional requirements that you wouldn't see if it were just 2 units, or if less than 6 spaces were proposed and they were just asking for the one item to waive the required number of parking stalls. And that's the parking within the front and side setbacks, which needs to be 20 feet away from the side lot lines as well. And then the next is outdoor parking stalls within 5 feet of a building with residential units, as the rear building has some parking located directly outside. Restricted end stalls, you need to have a buffer for these. On the ends, you have to have an additional space where that's not proposed. A reduced maneuvering aisle, there needs to be 24 feet in between of width, whereas that's not the aisle width. Between the parallel stalls is, 20, not 24, as it's proposed to be just 12 feet in between the parallel stalls. And then reduced entrance and exit width, which is at 12 feet wide, where 20 is the minimum. And then the next is the perimeter screening requirement, which is supposed to be 5 feet of wide strip of dense vegetation, fencing, or earth berm. There is landscaping proposed, but There's some different types of plantings that don't necessarily meet that definition. And then lastly is the outdoor lighting requirement, which requires a minimum of intensity of 1 foot candle for the entire surface of the facility, whereas no specific lighting for the parking is required. So to summarize, this has a few items that are just because of the size of the lot and the use, and not design specific, such as the frontage, the lot area, the use itself, and then some things that are just kind of not workable based on the design and the small size of the lot, such as side setbacks. Lot coverage is fairly close, and then the parking within 20 feet of a lot line might not be feasible either for the proposed use. The criteria to consider with this is whether or not this is an appropriate location for the proposed attached single-family dwellings as designed, that the proposed single-family attached dwellings as designed will not adversely affect the neighborhood, that the proposed single-family attached dwellings will not create a nuisance or serious hazard to vehicles or pedestrians. Fourth, that access to the site over streets is appropriate for the types and numbers of vehicles involved in the construction and operation of the single-family attached dwellings. And last, that literal compliance with parking requirements is impractical due to the nature of the use, or the location, size, frontage, depth, shape, or grade of the lot, or that such exceptions would be in public interest or in the interests of safety or protection of environmental features. This is a look at where the location is. It's located directly across the street from the manufacturing zone, where there is the large site for the Chapel Ridge Business Park, which has a wide variety of different business uses, as well as different size structures there. The lot, as you may notice, is between 2 large parking lots, with one abutter directly to the north, as well as some abutters to the south, with different types of uses there, as well as being located close to the Nonanton Village Center on Chapel Street. There's also the 558 MBTA bus route, as well as the 59 bus route there, as well as some proximity to the Greenway Trail and other modes of transportation. This is a fairly interesting area in terms of what the neighborhood context is. As you can see on the left, there's the earth view that shows kind of some of the scale of the old mill style buildings that are across the street, as this is close to the Charles River and where a lot of that industry popped up in the 19th century. Directly across the street that are much larger than the existing dwellings in the neighborhood, as well as what is proposed. On the right, you can see that there's a fairly large variety of different dwelling types in the neighborhood as well, whether that's pre-existing, non-conforming, or special permit. There are a fair amount of multifamily houses, and this is all from the assessor's database, with as much use of NewGov to confirm as possible. There might be some errors where some of those uses have changed over time, but there are at least several multifamily within the next couple of blocks, as well as a few 3-family and some single-family attached directly to the rear. So there are a decent sampling of different building types in the area as well. And I'll move on to what's proposed. This is what's currently existing. It's a single-family dwelling that is proposed to be raised and has gone through the historic process. This is the site plan of what's proposed. There's no grade work proposed for it, but as you can see, there are 2 buildings with a single-unit building in the front, and then a 2-unit 2 single-family attached dwellings to the rear. There are permeable spaces off the main driveway, with two parallel spots along the left of the driveway, and then two paired spots for units B and C at the end. As you can see, it is a fairly small lot at 9,478. And there aren't a lot, with it being narrow at 68 feet at the front, there's not a lot of design options that would limit some of the relief required for the setbacks. And with those total 6 spaces, some of that relief is required as well. Just wanted to also show the schematics because I know site plans can be busy sometimes, and it's always useful to take a different look. On the left, you can see just the schematic and how it will be broken down as far as some inclusion of bike parking areas, the breakdown of which areas belong to which proposed units. And then on the right is the proposed landscaping plan, where, as you can see, there is not the 5-foot buffer of screening that is required by the ordinance. Moving on to the elevations, you can see from the front, it's a little bit difficult because the front building does blend into the back building, but they are of a very similar design. They have some gables as well as dormers in them, but are generally about the scale at 32.5 feet of some of the other dwellings in the area. This is a look at the rear building from the rear with a slight view of the peak in the front. I'll look at both buildings from the right or southeast from that parking lot that directly abuts it. As you can see, they're fairly similar in their depth between the two units. And then lastly, a look at the left. My concluding comments with this would just be that this is a lot of relief that is being requested, but each item of relief is not necessarily significantly beyond the standards of what's allowed. Things like lot coverage are very close to the standard, and the site being pretty small is difficult to minimize any of those items of relief or to prevent them entirely, given the proposed use as a 3 total unit single family use between 2 buildings. With that, if they were to go to the by right option, they'd be limited to a floor area ratio of 0.48, whereas even though single family attached does not have a floor area ratio, what's proposed based on the submitted gross floor area would reach a floor area ratio of 0.51. And with that, it's not significantly more building coverage, while there will be more parking coverage than would be by any by right option. Having those 3 units there as opposed to 1 or 2 might potentially mean a lower sales price, as well as more units to work towards housing goals that we have expressed in the comprehensive plan, housing production plan, and that the council at different points has expressed as a goal to the planning department. Without any further comment, I will turn it back to the council. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Now we'll hear something from the petitioner.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Lawrence Lee, on behalf of the petitioner, with your permission, I'd like to share my screen, please.
Go ahead.
Thank you. All right, so I hope everyone can see that. I would like to just add a little bit more context. Joe, as typical, does a very, very good job in summarizing everything. I kind of want to sort of piggyback of what he said at the end there. There may appear to be, at first blush, oh my goodness, look at all of these waivers. But then if you actually look into the details of it, they're actually very minor, or they are triggered because of a component of the project What I mean by that is here, some of the parking quote unquote requirements or waivers are really associated with like a parking lot like this, which is next to us. So lighting requirements, screening requirements, just the fact that we're providing the required 2 parking spaces per dwelling unit. The interpretation of that is a parking facility greater than 5 parking spaces, thereby triggering all of these waivers. So it's almost as if they were treating us like a parking lot that's next to us, lighting, screening, and so forth. So if you were to sort of remove that as part of the consideration, if you will, the number of waivers that we're seeking is really not that many. And even again, if you were to dive into the waivers, is really not really applicable to our site. So by way of some context, we're really in the middle of squeezed into this manufacturing parking lot zone. Although on this side of our street, we are multi-residence 1. And the reason why I wanted to show some of these houses down further Chapel, as Joe pointed out, is for example, there's this by right development on further down Chapel that is this rectangular shape. And as we explained to our neighbors, one of the reasons why we are going for a special permit is because we wanted to have some additional design freedom, albeit a small lot, to break up the massing. So let me kind of take you through the neighborhood a little bit and then kind of get into the site plan and the reasons behind it. So here again, we're really next to and squeezed into 2 parking lots, the only 2 houses that are on this side of the street on Chapel. Looking down towards Chapel in both directions, our property is right over here. So this is the rendering that we had issued. The design, we've had a lot of communications with our neighbors. And one of the main things that came out from the numerous meetings was obviously the design. This is the rework of it. One of the requests was to make it look more residential, less modern. So this is a redesign from the first iteration, which our neighbors were in support of. Elevations that are provided, and I think Joe had already covered some of these, so I'm not going to rehash. This plan, I think, is pertinent. Let me just go to the next one, actually. So this is superimposed over the existing lot. Again, we have our parking lot to the right side here. And again, the fact that we have 6 parking spaces kind of trigger us to be treated like something like this where my cursor is. And this also illustrates how we broke up the buildings into 2, again, to make it less impactful. If we were to do a by right building, it would be something similar to what you saw earlier in the other project down the street, which was really just be a long rectangular shaped building, perhaps a driveway on both sides, and really cars that can be parked, whether it's 4 or 6 cars. That's not uncommon for larger two units. The unit sizes here, without counting the basement, is just north of 2,000 square feet each. So we have 3 moderately sized units. By breaking up the building into 2, we wanted to shift this so that it in some ways runs the length of it, the longer side of the building runs parallel to the street, as well as allowing some freed open space closer to our residential abutter. So you see that this building got pushed over to the parking lot. The existing driveway currently is on the right-hand side of the building. So this is let me go back to the prior one. This is where the driveway is currently, and the building is a lot closer to our neighbor. By way of comparison, we wanted to get rid of the structure so that it allows more sunlight over onto their property. Solar studies were provided as part of your packet. We provided what it may look like with the 2 buildings, I should say, with 3 units, 2 buildings. This is the existing conditions, solar, as well as a by right, just a way of comparing the three different situations. And then the FAR that was pointed out by Joe as well too. So here, we're just slightly above. You're within 100 square feet pretty much of a by right FAR. So if you were to look at in totality, the massing and also what I'm calling sort of the design freedom allowed under a special permit, all in all, it comes up to be a little bit better project because you now are dealing with not just one large building where our neighbors obviously don't have a say. Here, there's been a lot of input that we had received from our neighbors to make in terms of the current proposal that you're looking at right now. So that's what we have. There's one thing that I do want to point out that's not quite evident, which is there is actually a large existing retaining wall in the back. So our neighbor to the rear of us is lower, and there is a wall that is made up of, the best way I can describe it is old telephone poles stacked on top of one another. My client with our engineer have worked pretty closely with our direct abutter. There are two direct abutters behind us. They both happen to have engineering backgrounds and construction backgrounds, so they know what they're talking about. And so they have been working with us in figure out a way to rebuild that. So our idea here is to, as part of the project, in some ways fix a condition that's not great right now, which is this, what we're putting in quotes, this wall, which is really not in great condition. So that's one of the benefits, I think, to this project, alongside with 3 moderately sized units in a very uniquely situated location where we're really in the middle of this parking lot manufacturing area of the neighborhood. So that's the summary of our project, and be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Lee.
Thank you.
I don't probably need to tell you all, but it is after 10 o'clock. That clock is not accurate. I'm cognizant of the late hour. I'm cognizant of our brain ability and the ability to give fair discussion and thought to this project and the next one that we have on our agenda. So I'd just like to start out by mentioning that. Yes, Councilor Leary.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I agree with you, it's a late hour, and I think we should give this project our due diligence. Just my initial comments is I'm very glad that they've been working with the neighbors. I was concerned about the impacts on the abutter, who has a beautiful garden. I live on this street down the other end. And also that retaining wall made up of telephone poles in the back. There is a pretty steep drop-off, so I would like to dive more into the engineering on that. I want to make sure there's no elevation changes. I'd like to see more of the materials what they're putting on that they're using for that retaining wall and any possible negative impacts that might have. It sounds like it would overall be more positive. I think they've given this a lot of thought, and the design is pretty nice, and it's certainly in preference to the by right alternative. But I'm not prepared to really vote on this tonight, so I would like to make a motion to hold when we're ready to do so.
Excuse me? Oh, yeah.
But there may be members of the public that want to weigh in tonight.
While people are here, I'll consider that, and we'll keep the public hearing open, no matter what. Councilor Block?
Thank you, Chair. I appreciate your recognition of the hour for us and the public as well. I just want to say that my visit to this site raised a lot of questions in my mind about how we grapple with a small part of our city which almost feels in conflict with itself. As Attorney Lee said, there are parking lots on either side of these two houses. These two houses seem pretty isolated, but then just on the other side of that, there's a residential neighborhood. And it feels to me like we need real planning. We need some real thought about what do we want this street to look like. And that would help me try and figure out what do I think about this proposal. So I'm just very, I'm very open to it, but I'm also open to any ideas that I would hope our planning department would bring to our attention in some way. I realize this is in front of us and that's what we have to deal with, but we have a bigger picture here also that's beckoning. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Block. Councillor Lucas, and then Councillor Farrell.
Councilor Down.
Thank you.
And then Councillor Farrell.
Okay, thank you. I agree with Councilor Larry. We should not vote on this tonight. And looking at this project, it certainly needs some work. So I hope you're paying attention, Mr. Lee. This is a relatively small lot. It's less than 10,000 square feet. I think you said around 9,700. It is an undersized lot by, I believe, your admission and planning's admission. By my logic, if you have an undersized lot, you need to have smaller homes. Particularly, these homes are approximately 2,700 square feet. Your lot coverage is over. I understand it's over by a small portion, but it is still over and you're still asking for that relief. I'm going to ask that you try to be conforming with your lot coverage. You're building into both side setbacks. They're around 7 or 8 feet. I understand if you want to build into the side setback to the south, which is the parking lot side, I am fine with that. But building into the side setback where you have the home on the other side, when it's 7 or 8 feet, when it should be 25 feet. It should be 25 feet. And you are building way, way into the setback. Yeah, it's not okay with me. I do have a question for planning. For the by right option, what are the setbacks for the side, for the by right option?
I'll take a look. It's in the multi-residence 1 district, so I'll pull up the zoning ordinance to make sure I give you a correct answer on that.
Okay. Let's see. And also, while you're there, if you could give me the lot coverage for the two-family in the MR1 zone, I believe. Other than that, I have no issue with allowing 3 units here. I think the 3 units are better than the by right option, but I just want to see all the details on the by right option. You need zoning relief. I think there's a lot of zoning relief related to the parking because it's 6 stalls or more. I have no issue with that, but it's just really about the lot coverage and building into the side setback to the north. Those are my comments for this evening, and I'll leave it at that, and I'll wait for an answer from planning when you get that. Thank you.
I think we will have a lot to talk about next time. Councillor Downs and then Councillor Farrell.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Because of the hour, I will be brief, and I agree we should keep things brief. It is late, and we have one more item. My only comment on this, you're surrounded by parking in a very, very walkable neighborhood. Can you do with less blacktop? And I know you're putting in cobbles, but they aren't as absorbent. And they do not provide any shade, and they do not provide any climate services or ecological services by converting all that heat and carbon dioxide into oxygen. So that's my major reservation with this. I think you could do with 4 spaces for 3 units, and I appreciate that they're smaller. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Downs. Councillor Farrell.
Thank you very much, Chair. Pretty quick, I think all of these are important comments that have been made so far. The one thing that 2 things struck me. It was much more interesting than I thought it was going to be, but secondly, it was very plain. And I guess I'd just like to see something in the design that does like maybe shutters on the windows, just to give it a sense of a real hominess. I mean, you're out there in the middle of nowhere. Just a thought about design, but I agree with the other counselors and their concerns. Thank you.
Thank you. Last word from planning. Joe?
Just to come back to what the lot coverage would be, and it'd be the same whether or not that would be a single family or two family detached. That would be 30% for the by right option, and then for the side setbacks, it'd be 10 feet on either side. So a little bit more permissive for the single family or two family uses with that regards.
I would like to make one quick correction to that, if I may. The side setback for an old lot is 7.5 feet. 10
You're
feet
correct.
would be a
Yep.
new lot.
I'm sorry.
So, yep, we're an old lot, so we would be 7.5 feet on the side. And the lot coverage is 30%, so we're just almost 5% under the by right.
Okay. This is a public hearing. I don't see any hands up. There was a hand up by somebody named AA. I see someone in the audience. AA, put your hand back up virtually if you did want to speak. Otherwise, save it for the next time when we'll have a lot more time. And sir, please just come right up to the microphone.
Hello, my name is Mark Rossi. I recently moved into Chapel Street with my wife. We live at 112 Chapel Street. We moved in with my grandmother. She's getting older and we're helping her out. We're really excited about the opportunity. And I came here expecting to hate the plan presented. I expected something like 92 Chapel Street, that giant rectangle that is a disgusting eyesore and kind of makes me hate modern development. But I actually really liked the proposed idea. I echo Councilor Leary's sentiment that it's a heck of a lot better than the other option. So thank you all very much. It's a shame to see that nice old-fashioned Italian stucco house go as a fourth-generation Italian living on Chapel Street. But if this is our best option, we'll take it.
Well, thank you and your wife for coming and sitting through this extremely long public hearing on many projects, and welcome to Newton and welcome to Chapel Street. Councilor Maliki.
Thanks. I'd just like to note that this is like ground zero for Heat Island in Nonantum, and those trees along the back of the property lines are really the only substantial relief to the Heat Island. So I would hope it doesn't look like the large tree in the back southeast corner is going to be preserved. It would be great if there were a way to do that and not lose so much of the key tree canopy. Thanks.
Thanks, very good point. We do have a lot to chew on when this comes back to us, when we have more time and more brains. We're going to entertain the motion that I believe Councilor Leary made to hold this. We're going to keep the public hearing open. Can we just do hold on? You want to do? Okay. Roll call.
Councilor Block?
Aye.
Councilor Downs?
Aye.
Councilor Farrell?
Aye.
Councilor Kelly?
Aye.
Councilor Leary?
Aye.
Councilor Lobovitz?
Aye.
Councilor Lucas?
Aye.
Motion passed.
Okay, let's see what we can do on this next one while giving it fair attention. We've seen it all before, so we know something about this. Maybe we can be efficient. Item number 160-24, which is a request to allow a retaining wall exceeding 4 feet in height in a setback and exceed FAR at 54 to 56 Indiana Terrace. Joe, I think this is you again for planning?
That's correct. Bear with me while I get my screen up. Okay, so this is a continuance item. It's the first thing to note. This was previously heard on April 2nd of this year. The I'll go through the background a little bit in a little bit here. But there are just two items required for relief. And the first is retaining walls exceeding 4 feet within the side setback, as well as request to exceed floor area ratio. Overall, this is the background. It first came up for historic consideration in 2022, where the house that was there was raised since. And in 2023, it got a by right building permit for the construction of a two-family dwelling on the location. And then in February of 2024, they submitted their special permit application as they needed relief for the floor area ratio of 0.57, where 0.454 was the maximum, as well as for the retaining walls. And then they came up on the public hearing date. And before that, planning conducted just a quick look at the site visit and saw that the elevations didn't match what had been submitted in the plans, reached out to the developer and that team to let them know that they would need to give us the corrected architectural plans and revised site plans, and they requested and were granted a continuance from them. And then last month they submitted revised materials. So with that, this is a long history for the project and the advice that planning department has always received from legal. And I know Attorney Temple is still on the call and can help out if any further detail from legal is needed. But this is an after the fact relief project, so everything that I'm going to show on the plans has already been constructed. However, the advice is always to consider it as if it were being proposed as a new project. So the criteria to consider are that the lot presents challenging topography, which limits the use of the property such that it cannot be improved without the implementation of retaining walls exceeding 4 feet, that the retaining walls exceeding 4 feet will not adversely impact the adjacent property, neighborhood, or public, that the retaining walls exceeding 4 feet is the minimum structure necessary to allow a subject property to be reasonably utilized. And lastly, that the proposed increase in non-conforming floor area ratio is consistent with and not in derogation the size, scale, and design of other structures in the neighborhood. I look at where the property is. The only thing that is really notable here is just how small the lot sizes are. This particular lot is under 8,000 square feet, which is where the majority of designs would be difficult to accommodate, especially along with the slope, where a lot of the designs are going to have the below first area or basement area count towards floor area ratio. That means that most designs are going to exceed that by right floor area ratio, and that most dwellings in the area are already prior existing non-conforming structures. So next was a look at what was previously existing on the site, and a look at where those walls previously existed on the site as well. Some of them being fairly large in size. One thing that I really do want to call to attention is from the front lot line to the rear is about 80 feet with over a 20 feet drop in elevation. So with that, some degree of retaining walls already exists and is likely necessary to create a usable site, and special permit criteria, regardless of how they are actually constructed or proposed, something might be necessary on the site as it already exists to prevent erosion, to create usable space, and everything else that our ordinance requires of retaining walls. I'll look at both what was originally proposed and what's currently proposed. On the right, you can see where it's kind of called out what's changed. The height's gone down slowly or slightly with some of the grade changes. And you can see there's a little added section of retaining wall over along the left lot line. The front elevation has changed, and I'll show that a little bit more clearly in the elevations. And then the right section has also changed, whereas it continued directly along the lot line. Previously, it's now kind of contouring on the reason that I believe, and the petitioner can speak to this, but the reason from the petitioner for that I've heard is that they wanted to go around an existing tree. But at any rate, there's 5 different sections of the retaining walls that require relief, with the largest section being over on the back left of the house, where the retaining walls reach around 8 feet. I'll look at the elevations, what was originally proposed, and then on the bottom, which is what it actually looks like in reality now. They added that balcony, took away kind of that full A-frame looking gable that goes all the way down to the bottom, replaced it with gables that just go from the roof line down to where the second floor ends, and added gables and doorways over to the left and right. They've also I'll show it on the side a little bit more clearly. There's been no changes to the rear elevation from the original proposal to the current. Next, you can see where that balcony pops out, as well as it might be a little bit difficult to see because it's only a push out of about a foot. But on that second floor, the floor comes out an added foot in distance, which accounts for the added FAR, where currently it reaches 0.58, where the last proposal was 0.57. Along with some of the grading changes, overall a fairly minor change to floor area ratio, and no sort of special permit relief impacts of the changes to the design with the balcony, and changes to some of the columns and gables and other architectural features. Then that's a look at the other elevation from the side, which doesn't show anything in particular that you couldn't see from the right. So before I turn it over to the council, there's the 2 items of relief with this, the first being floor area ratio, which is fairly comparable to other petitions that have been granted by the special permit process in the past, where 0.54 is allowed. They're asking for 0.58. It's a very small lot, and it fits within the neighborhood context. And additionally, this is a dwelling that appears as normally looking 2.5 story dwelling from the street, as a lot of the massing is hidden by the existing slope. The second matter is the retaining walls, which can be a little bit more difficult to dissect, especially as a planner not with any sort of an engineering background. It's difficult to determine some of the special permit criteria as far as what is the minimum height required for retaining walls for them to be functional. They can serve an important function in terms of stopping erosion, creating that usable area. I don't have the expertise to say that that 8 feet is or is not appropriate for the area, but I can say that it's a significant amount of retaining walls on the site. And I also want to call attention to the fact that we've at least drafted in the conditions that there will be definite checks from the engineering department and inspectional services department. From the initial engineering report in April, there's no update. We reached out to John Daglian in the engineering department just to make sure that there wasn't any necessity for another review as the plans have changed that they've submitted. And the main issue with the design and that Mr. Daglian pointed out in his memo is just that there needs to be an operations and maintenance plan in compliance with the city stormwater ordinance. So we've built that into the conditions and have wanted to make sure that we call out landscaping in the conditions as well, as plants can play a very important part in erosion control and also structural integrity of the walls themselves. I know that doesn't necessarily make anything clear for the council in terms of how retaining walls function, but I can say that the Inspectional Services Department and Engineering will be reviewing these to make sure that they are well constructed and provide proper drainage for the site in compliance with the city's stormwater ordinance. That's all I have to say before turning it back to the council. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ioannisi. Next, we'll hear from the petitioner, Mr. Pierce. Is that you with your hand up?
It is, Chair. Pleasure to speak with you this evening. Joe does a terrific job in his analysis, and I'm sure that you all had an opportunity, although you had so many items tonight, to read his memo, and it's very complete. I just want to add a couple of things that are really, I think, terrifically important in terms of the context. And as he led with the fact, and you saw in that short chronology, this project had a by right building permit. And the way that they had been enabled to get that permit was, one, to had a full engineering review and a full drainage review, all of which, and a structural analysis of the wall system that was part of the original application. And that's a critical element. Those things are by valued. The original plan required no FAR relief and no walls in the side setback, but did require at places 14-foot high wall at the back of the property. And what that would have enabled the property to do is there would have been a very large wall, not in the setback, and then a grading that would have buried much of the basement. And as a result, there was no special permit needed for either. And so that building permit was issued, and the work had started, and in part, it was critical because the engineer and the builder, the structural engineer, determined the work really had to start from the bottom up because of that very significant grade change that Joe mentioned. During the analysis and in evaluating the project and actually having some conversations with the abutter at the far back, my client, who's the developer and the owner, came up with the idea that it might make more sense to terrace the backyard, have more space for some open space, for some better use of the property at the back. And that, as a result, though, would have required that they would have got rid of the large wall at the back, but have some walls along the side. But with the terracing, as a result, as Joe mentioned, a lot more of the basement would be exposed, and therefore, even though it was already existing space, now that would count as FAR. And so that would have needed a special permit for the FAR. So the wall systems were to replace a much taller wall and to provide for more usable space, and also they felt better erosion control on the property. So that's one thing I really wanted to stress with you. The other thing that's important is there has been a lot, and in fairness to your encouragement and mine, with the discussion with the abutters, and if you remember, there were a couple of people that spoke at the original hearing. Sajid has worked a lot with the abutters on both sides and in the back. And he represents to me that they've been on the site. They've been concerned for erosion and things like that. Walk the property. He did design the wall system on the right-hand side to sort of serpentine a little bit, both to take into consideration the tree, but also it's very important, as Joe pointed out, there were a lot of retaining walls, not just on this property, but they sort of almost merged into the retaining walls for the abutting properties. And so for the integrity of it all in designing the wall system, understandably, the abutters were interested as to how that would all work out. And so a lot of attention was paid to that. And there was a lot of work done with both the abutters on the right and on the left. It's my understanding that, unless we get surprised this evening, but that at least verbally they'd indicated, and Jeet is here to speak if you want to talk to him about it, because he had all these meetings, that they were very much more satisfied after they'd had an opportunity to see how the construction was done and how it was all designed. One of the things that also Joe mentioned, and I pointed out, that hopefully you will see the value in the before and after, and certainly there's nothing we can do now about the fact that some of these wall systems were put in as part of the contractors feeling that the need to stabilize the slope and getting rid of the large wall. Obviously, it's always better to come to you first, and I mean, some of you know me, that I've been doing this for 30 or 40 years, and you always come to you first if we can. But I believe that, I hope that you will be able to see that the design here is much more sensitive and not having such a massive wall at the back. The other thing is there isn't a mention of it. I'm sure there was so much work going on with all your petitions. But Joe mentioned there is I think a pretty robust but nicely designed landscape plan that is in the portal that we would want, obviously, to have cited in a board order. I'm sorry, old-fashioned, a council order, because it's important that you're aware that does exist, and that a lot of care would be taken to both some of the existing trees and then also some shrubs and trees, which does help for a slope stabilization. A couple more things, and I appreciate the time. I know it's late, is that John's memo, when he wrote it back in March, I hadn't had a chance to talk to him at that time, but I want to stress with you, and I have talked to him since then, I think he understands this, that this had all been, the wall design and the drainage system had all been fully vetted by engineering. The associate city engineer, the other engineer that worked with John Daggs, Frank, as you know, worked for many years, and he's retired, but he did the full review of this. And the drainage system is in. It complies with the city's stormwater design requirements. It was the one that was required originally, and the engineer has certified that there were no changes in the new design that would have changed the runoff coefficients and all that. And that information was supplied to ISD and to John. John also asked to have a recertification of the wall plans. The same structural design for these much lower walls was employed as was employed by the up to 14-foot wall at the back. And so that design met the structural engineering criteria for the larger wall. And so the new walls, the engineer said, filed some additional plans which John requested during the summer to be sure that the same design was utilized for this, and it was. And so that some of the requests in his March memo had already been complied with, but then were recertified during the summer. So I think those are critical elements that were worth considering. And the FAR modification, as Joe pointed out, is very tiny percentage that is as compared to the house that was by right approved. That's a really critical element, that the change really in the FAR is because 99.5% of that is the result that the basement is counting a lot more because we weren't filling in the whole back because of that massive wall. And this, I think, gives more useful open space for the people that will live in the two homes. There is then that fractional change that Joe caught for the architectural design at the front of the building, and it did fractionally change the FAR that we had originally filed for, but I think 0.001%. But it's really, it's a technical increase in FAR, but there was no habitable space. Those columns, sort of, there's the bump outs along the front, because they run from floor to ceiling. It created a fractional little square footage where those bump outs occurred, but you couldn't put a chair or a table or something. It's an architectural feature. And as Joe points out in the memo, and they took effort to this, that if you walk on Indiana Terrace, you'll see that a number of the elements that are in this house, the peaks and the gables and things like that, are in the houses that are adjacent on Indiana Terrace.
Thank you,
And
Mr.
so-
Purse. Thank you.
Okay, I'm sorry.
I think we
I
got
don't get
it.
to come before you very often, so I can't control
Yeah,
myself.
do it all at once.
I'm very sorry. I know it's late.
I think you've hit all the key spots for us, and we know that we're focusing on the FAR, which is a little bit minimal due to the basement, and the walls, which are up to 8 feet tall. So those are the things before us that we're
That's
going
right.
to consider tonight. Anything else different that you need to hit before we go to the public?
No, I should think not. I just wanted to stress that my client is here, especially if he wanted to talk about either how some of the decisions were made to make these modifications, and his conversations with the neighbors to take their concerns into consideration.
Good to know. Thanks again. Okay. Are there any members of the public who would like to speak to this? As Councilor Leary says, they're all asleep, as most sane people would be at this time. Matthew.
Good evening. My name is Matthew Jakowski. I reside at 36 Indiana Terrace. I'm 3 doors down from this property. I want to express my concern in regards to the city engineering department approving the site as is and what's coming forth in regards to needing modifications. As it was presented, it's a very difficult site with a 20-foot drop, and I would think it would need a lot of attention in regards to the type of housing units that would be placed on such a precarious lot. And it's literally a cliff. So I want to express that concern in regards to this discussion of having a waiver to be able to increase the height of the needed walls to be able to work with the property at hand. I also like to express my concern in regards to the architectural design. I don't agree. I'd like to object to some of the comments made that it is in reference to it being similar to houses in the neighborhood. It's a huge house relative to the size of the lot, and it stands out as a result of being right on the corner. It adding 2 additional gables as well as a balcony that jets out into the street surface, the front of the house. Again, it comes as an enormous piece of property for a relatively small lot. I will say I've been listening along the way to all of these other properties that you've been discussing tonight, and hearing that some of the construction companies are trying to be good neighbors. one of the things that we've noticed, it's been in a standstill since April. I'm not really sure what's behind the hold on I realized that there was they had to get back into having a hearing. But again, as being in the neighborhood of having a property sit for 6 months with a fence around it that was collapsing, and I would be calling City Hall and saying, listen, it's not a safe construction fence that's around it. Could you please send somebody out to correct that? As well as the digging that happened outside of the property onto the street. Those potholes remained for 5 months as potholes, again, with calls to the city to ask them to come and fill them in. And it eventually did happen just recently within the past month. So those are some of my concerns in regards to what's happening on the property at this point.
Thank you very much. Any other comments from the public, neighbors, abutters, other Newton people? Again, I think most people are in bed. If you are there and you want to speak up, do just raise your hand. We'll just take it into committee now to have some comments from the Land Use Committee members who are asleep too. Councillor Downs.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is in my ward, and I agree with you about the hour. I think we probably ought to put this on hold, and so I am going to make that motion. Not that I think this is a bad project and that this is a bad situation. Replacing a 14-foot retaining wall with a series of retaining walls, which are probably more stable and certainly were something the neighbors were happier with. As I understand from communications with them via email, I think is an improvement. The small amount of increase in FIR doesn't bother me. I agree this fits in fairly well with the neighborhood. It is a very difficult site. It is very steep. There isn't a lot we can do there too. And there are a lot of houses, frankly, built on a cliff in Upper Falls. That is kind of part of the charm. That and it being dense and very walkable. But I will let my colleagues, I also suspect my colleagues will have more thoughts on this. So I'm going to move hold and hope we can go to bed soon.
We will consider that motion. Councillor Lucas?
Thank you, Chair. I support Councillor Downs' motion to hold. But I do have some comments and questions. I am okay with the FAR relief. I think it's only, it says right here, the FAR is 0.58 where 0.54 is the maximum allowed by right. It's over by 0.04. I am fine with that. The other piece of zoning relief is the retaining walls, and that's primarily due to the nature of the site where it drops down in the back. If you all remember, a month or two ago, we had 1188, I think it was 1188 or 1185 Chestnut Street in Upper Falls. This is kind of near it, and that's at the bottom of the ledge. This is at the top of the ledge, so it full circle. The engineering memo was from April. I think it was dated April 7th. And to the petitioner, has any work been done on this site with respect to the retaining walls since April?
May I speak?
Yes, please.
Yeah, to my understanding, when some of these questions came up, and because it may have been counselors or people raised questions with inspectional services, and my client is here with his hand up, and he would know this much more intimately. But no, I believe that it was as a result of this all coming up that the inspectional services said that they would not countenance any additional work on the property until these issues are resolved. So except there may have been some need for stabilization, and Mr. Shahani could answer that, Counselor, but beyond that, no, that unfortunately is why the gentleman at 36 has seen such a lack of activity. It's because the client was not, able to keep moving. And in fact, I even met with him one time during the summer and said, can't we, you know, do you want me to sort of try to deal with ISD and see if we can get this going, you know, at least for cleanup and things like that? He said, no, that's, you know, let's just get the various plans that everybody is looking for. And then, you know, I don't think that I'm afraid, and I'm sorry that it's taken so long to get back to you. I'd pretty much hope that we would be back to you in July, not so late in August, and I'll take whatever responsibility for that I have.
We are definitely going to entertain a vote on the motion to hold. I am about to call on Chief Shahani first before we do that, because we'd like to hear from him.
Thank you for the time. I'll just be quick. Attorney Pierce basically covered most of it. So there has been no work done since April, and I know the neighbors are a little bit concerned about that, and they do want to get stuff done. But you know, at this point, we'll wait for the permissions and then decide what we need to do. The potholes that was brought up to us very recently, and as soon as that was brought in, you know, our vendor, it was not the city that took care of it. It was actually the asphalt vendor that did it. And they have 1 year after the construction also where they're responsible for it. So it's a great thing for neighbors. Again, whenever, if the fence has fallen, you know, we have promptly gone in and done it the same day. So we've tried to minimize any hindrances to the neighbors.
Thank you. I'm all set for now.
Thank you, Councilor Lucas. We're about to vote on this motion to hold, but I'd like to just make a couple of very quick comments. I'm glad that Joe Iadanisi mentioned that operation and maintenance, according to the stormwater plan, is going to be part of the conditions. We're going to obviously include the landscaping plan, and I think for many of us, the recertification of the wall plans and the structural integrity of those walls is, at least for me, the most crucial thing of all, and we will get to that when we bring it back next. We're going to keep the public hearing open, and we're going to vote to hold this item tonight.
Councillor Block?
Aye.
Councillor Downs?
Aye.
Councillor Farrell?
Aye.
Councillor Kelly?
Aye.
Councillor Leary?
Aye.
Councillor Lobovitz?
Aye.
Councillor Lucas?
Aye.
Motion passes.
We are adjourned. Good night, everyone. And I apologize for how long this went, particularly on that one item that we didn't foresee.